Tonight, we're uncovering what really created the Pokémon world. Every myth explained from generations 1 to 9. I know this is an exciting topic, but don't worry, I'll keep my narration calm to ensure you can still drift off. Thank you to those of you who've been joining us consistently. If you're falling asleep with us tonight, let me know in the comments how many nights in a row you've been here, and if this is your first night, just comment day 1. Now let's get back to the video. In the beginning, there was only a swirling void of chaos. No light, no matter, no time, and no space. Then, from the center of this nothingness, an egg appeared. This is the starting point of every story we tell ourselves about the world of Pokémon. A world that feels as vast and ancient as our own, yet far more mysterious. We often look at these creatures as companions, as tools for battle, or as friends that walk beside us through tall grass. But when you peel back the layers of history, when you look past the bright lights of the modern gyms and the sleek technology of the Pokéball, you find a foundation built on cosmic horror, divine architecture, and the terrifying weight of eternity. We are told that a single entity, born from that egg, reached out with 1,000 arms to shape the universe. But what does that actually mean for the ground we walk on? How does a world transition from the silent majesty of creation to the chaotic, blood-stained history of human ambition? To understand the Pokémon world is to understand a timeline that stretches back millions of years, and involving deities that represent the very fabric of reality and ancient civilizations that rose to greatness only to be swallowed by the earth they tried to conquer. This isn't just a collection of campfire stories. This is the definitive record of existence itself. We're going to travel back to the moment the first heartbeat of time was heard, and the first inch of space was carved out of the dark. We will witness the birth of the oceans and the raising of the continents, fueled by a primal rage that still simmer beneath the surface today. We will look at the scars left on the planet by wars that lasted for decades, fueled by the weaponization of life itself. Why did the king of a golden age turn a machine of resurrection into a tool of mass destruction? What fell from the stars 20,000 years ago to poison the very air of an entire region? And why is it that the further we dig into the earth, the more we find that our history has been systematically erased, rewritten by those who wanted to hide the true power of the legends that watch us from the shadows? The stakes are higher than a simple game of catch and release. Every step you take in the Paldean wilderness or the snowy peaks of Sinjoh is a step over the bones of a forgotten era. There are secrets buried in the underdepths of the Great Crater that have waited 2 million years to be seen. There are golems crafted from ice, rock and magma, standing as silent sentinels to a creator who feared his own creations. We often think of ourselves as the masters of this world, but the deeper we go into the mythology, the more we realize we are merely guests in a house built by giants. Tonight, we are going to reconcile every myth, every legend, and every historical fragment from the first generation to the 9th. We will bridge the gap between the divine and the terrestrial. We will explore the dark side of infinity energy and the cosmic accidents that gave us the power to change the very form of our partners. From the silent frozen halls of the crown tundra to the sun-drenched ruins of ancient empires, we are going to piece together the shattered mirror of time. This is the complete history of everything. This is what really created the Pokémon world. So settle in, let the lights dim, and prepare to walk through the corridors of time. The journey is long, the myths are deep, and the truth is more incredible than any legend could ever suggest. The world as we know it is a thin veil over a much older, much stranger reality. A world of harmony, but that harmony was bought with the price of cataclysm. Every legendary Pokémon we encounter isn't just a rare specimen. They are the living manifestations of the forces that allow us to exist. When Dialga breathes, time flows. When Palkia shifts, the distance between us and the stars remains constant. But what happens when these forces collide? What happens when the balance is tipped by human greed or the simple, cruel passage of centuries? We have seen empires rise on the backs of dragons and fall into the dust of truth and ideals. We have seen heroes forgotten by the very people they saved, their names scrubbed from the monuments of history until only the Pokémon remember what truly happened. To truly understand the present, we must go back to the beginning of the beginning. We must look at the crystal depths of Area Zero and the blackened plateaus of ancient Hisui. We must ask why certain species were hunted to the brink of extinction 1500 years ago, and why others were worshipped as gods. The timeline of this world is a tapestry of light and shadow, and tonight we are going to trace every thread. Whether you are looking for the comfort of a familiar story or the thrill of discovering a hidden truth, this is the place where the lore finally makes sense. No more contradictions, no more missing pieces, just the pure, unadulterated history of a world defined by its monsters and its myths. As we begin this descent into the past, remember that history is not just about what happened, it is about what remains. The ruins of Alph, the towers of Ecruteak, the scorched earth of the Kalos War, these are not just backgrounds for an adventure. They are the evidence, they are the scars. And as we peel back the layers of these 9 generations, we will find that the story of the Pokémon world is the story of a struggle to survive in the shadow of the divine. It is a story of how we found companionship in a world that was originally designed only for the gods. Let us start where it all began. Let us go back to the egg. Let us go back to the void. And from there, we will build the world piece by piece until we reach the modern day. This is the ultimate exploration of the Pokémon mythology. This is the history of us, of them, and of the world that holds us both. In the beginning, there was utter silence, a profound hush that enveloped everything and nothing at once. No stars flickered in the distance, no winds whispered across unseen plains, no echoes bounced from walls that had yet to form. This was the void, you see, a boundless emptiness predating the very concepts we cling to. Time with its relentless march, space with its vast expanses, matter with its solid weight. Picture yourself adrift in that quiet, your breath the only sound you'll ever know, stretching into eternity without a single ripple to disturb it. No light pierced the dark, no warmth chased the chill, just an infinite stillness where potential slumbered unseen, waiting for the spark that would shatter the quiet forever. That silence held for eons we can't even fathom, a canvas untouched by creation's brush. No atoms danced, no forces tugged at invisible threads, no rhythm pulsed to mark the passage of moments that weren't there. It was the ultimate void, pure and unyielding, where even the idea of existence felt like a distant dream. You might wonder what cradled such nothingness. Perhaps a dream of some greater mind, or simply the absence of all dreams. Lore from the Sinjoh region whispers of this primordial hush, etched into ancient tablets and passed down through generations of scholars who gazed at the stars and pondered the gap between them. They called it the Great Pause, the breath before the roar, where reality itself hung suspended, fragile as a soap bubble on the edge of popping. Then, without warning, without cause or ceremony, something stirred in the heart of that void. A faint glow began to coalesce, not from fire or fusion, but from pure essence drawing itself together. It swelled slowly, deliberately, forming a perfect sphere, smooth, iridescent, pulsing with an inner light that defied the surrounding dark. This was the cosmic egg, the first anomaly in the flawless silence, born not of collision or chaos, but of inevitability. Legends from Hisui's ancient scrolls describe it shimmering, like liquid starlight, its shell veined with colours no mortal eye has named, humming a low vibration that sent the first tremors through the emptiness. It floated there, alone, cradled by nothing, growing denser, brighter, until the void around it seemed to bow in reverence. From within that egg, life itself cracked forth. The shell fractured with a soundless burst, unleashing a blaze of raw power that illuminated the non-space like a newborn sun. Out stepped Arceus, the original one, its form a whirlwind of gold and white, majestic and incomprehensible. Towering yet ethereal, with a wheel of creation spinning at its back, Arceus emerged fully formed, eyes blazing with the wisdom of infinities. Sinjoh myths paint this birth in vivid strokes, Arceus shaking free of the egg's remnants, which dissolved into motes of cosmic dust, scattering like fireflies into the void. No cries echoed, no cries were needed. Its presence alone redefined existence. A singular being who was both child and parent of the universe. You can almost feel the awe of those first chroniclers, scribbling by torchlight, trying to capture the moment when godhood stepped into the silence and claimed it. Arceus wasted no time in the emptiness. With a gaze that pierced the dark, it extended its 1,000 arms, limbs of shimmering energy, each tipped with plates that hummed like tuning forks. These arms reached out, grasping at the threads of potential woven into the void itself. One by one, they wove the first shards of reality, forging the laws of physics from nothingness. Gravity bent to its will, pulling fragments together into the seeds of planets. Electromagnetism sparked, birthing the first charges that would one day light stars. Strong and weak forces locked atoms in eternal embrace. Each arm moved with precision, etching rules into the fabric of what would become our world. Laws unyielding, yet beautiful in their balance. Imagine the spectacle, arms fanning out like a cosmic loom, threads of time flickering into being, space folding into dimensions, matter coalescing from ethereal mist into tangible sparks. Those initial shards gleamed like jewels against the void, proto-matter glowing with possibility, the blueprint for galaxies yet to spin. Arceus shaped them tirelessly, its 1,000 arms a blur of motion, instilling inertia to keep worlds turning, entropy to ensure change, relativity to warp the stars. From Sinjoh's lore, we learn these weren't random acts. They were deliberate, harmonious, ensuring the universe wouldn't collapse back into silence. The original one paused only to survey its work, the shards orbiting like faithful children, each pulsing with the physics that would govern every Pokémon battle, every flight of a Pidgey, every tide pulled by Kyogre's ancient call. This was creation's foundation, solid yet alive, whispered in every Megastone's glow and Dynamax storm centuries later. Yet even as those shards took form, Arceus sensed the need for more, guardians to nurture what it had wrought, weavers to expand the tapestry beyond these fragile beginnings. The air, if you can call it that, thickened with anticipation, the void now humming with latent power. What came next would bind time and space into the Pokémon world we know, birthing entities whose clashes still echo in Sinjoh's blackened plateaus. You'll want to hear how it unfolds in Chapter 2, the Creation Trio and the Fabric of Existence, where Arceus summons its most trusted emissaries and the universe truly awakens. Arceus, the original one, stood alone in the vast emptiness, its form shimmering with the raw potential of everything yet to be. But even a creator cannot weave the universe from nothing without tools of unimaginable power. So from plates of adamantine steel and lustrous pearl, Arceus forged the first true governors of existence, Dialga, the temporal Pokémon, and Palkia, the spatial Pokémon. Dialga emerged first, a colossal dragon of burnished metal, its chest plate pulsing like the heartbeat of eternity. You can almost feel the weight of its birth, the way time itself stuttered into motion around it, seconds stretching and contracting in jagged bursts. Arceus granted Dialga dominion over the flow of time, commanding it to temper the chaos of endless nows into a steady river. Past, present, future, they bent to Dialga's roar, a sound that echoes through eons, marking the tick of every clock yet to be built, the wither of every leaf before it falls. Without Dialga, moments would dissolve into irrelevance, history crumbling before it could form. Then came Palkia, bursting forth in a cataclysm of iridescent scales and gravitational fury. Space warped at its presence, distances folding like paper under an unseen hand. Arceus tasked it with the expansion of space to stretch the void into dimensions where stars could ignite and worlds could drift apart. Picture the universe inflating like a breath held too long. Palkia's claws raking through nothingness, carving pockets for matter to gather, voids for oceans to fill. Its pearl-like orbs on chest and shoulders hummed with the strain of holding infinity at bay, preventing collapse into a single, suffocating point. These two titans circled their creator, their powers intertwining in a dance both harmonious and volatile. Time without space is meaningless drift. Space without time is stagnant void. Together, they began to sculpt the framework of reality, Dialga threading chronology through Palkia's vast expanses. Galaxies spun into tentative spirals, nebulae coalesced into the promise of planets. Yet something gnawed at the edges, a shadow born of imbalance, a counterforce Arceus could not ignore. To complete the triad, Arceus delved deeper into the primal chaos, shaping Giratina from the seething embodiment of antimatter. This third dragon slithered into being, its ghostly wings unfurling like torn veils, crimson eyes gleaming with the hunger of opposition. Giratina was the flip side, the negative charge to Dialga and Palkia's positive surge, matter's eternal foe, devouring light and form wherever it roamed. Its body, skeletal and serpentine, radiated a cold that warped reality into fractured mirrors, antimatter tendrils lashing out to unmake what its siblings built. But Giratina's nature proved too wild, too destructive. It clashed with Dialga and Palkia in primal fury, time fracturing, space tearing at the seams. The young universe trembled on the brink of unraveling. Arceus, seeing the peril, banished Giratina to the distortion world, a parallel realm twisted into impossible geometries, a prison of inverted physics where antimatter could rage without threat. There, Giratina coils eternally, its growls echoing as distortions in our world, a reminder that creation demands restraint. Only then did true stability emerge, the balance between these three entities, Dialga's relentless march of time, Palkia's boundless stretch of space, and Giratina's contained antimatter, locked the physical universe into form. Dialga ensured progression without stagnation, Palkia provided room for growth without implosion, and Giratina's exile warded off total annihilation. Matter stabilized, atoms bonding into molecules, gravity pulling dust into worlds. The Pokémon world took shape, a fragile bubble of order amid cosmic indifference, where rivers carve canyons over millennia, and stars wheel overhead in predictable arcs. Legends from Sinjoh whisper of this delicate equilibrium, etched into ancient spear pillars that pierce the sky like forgotten sentinels. Mortals who glimpsed these gods felt the awe of forces beyond comprehension. Time, Pokémon freezing foes in eternal stasis, space lords warping battlefields into labyrinths. Even in conflict, as when Dialga and Palkia once raged across a blackened plateau, their energies didn't destroy, but transformed, birthing megastones that crystallized raw power for lesser beings. Yet that balance holds, a testament to Arceus's design, allowing life to flicker into being on a blue-green orb suspended in the void. You might wonder how such cosmic architects paved the way for the lands and seas we know. That story unfolds next in The Terrestrial Architects, where we'll uncover the forces that sculpted continents and filled them with primal fury. Stay with me, because what they unleashed changes everything. With the foundations of time and space now woven into existence, and Giratina sealed away in its fractured realm, the young planets coalesced from the cosmic dust, a molten cradle battered by unrelenting forces. Gravity pulled matter inward, heat surged from its core, and the first atmospheres churned with volatile gases, forging a world still raw and untamed. Deep within this cauldron, elemental pressures, built like the breath of gods, compressing oceans of liquid rock and vaporized waters until they could no longer contain their fury. From those seething depths, Kyogre and Groudon emerged, twin titans born of the planet's primal heart. Kyogre, the vast sea basin incarnate, slumbered in the subterranean waters that had pooled amid the cooling crust, its body a leviathan of sapphire scales and boundless hydration. Groudon, forged from the magma rivers, an iron-rich mantle, rose as a colossus of crimson armor, its every step cracking the fragile shell above. They were not mere beasts, but the architects of terrain itself, embodiments of the endless tug-of-war between water and land that had simmered since the world's infancy. Kyogre stirred first, its awakening unleashing torrents that flooded the fractured surface. What began as shallow basins swelled into vast roiling seas, carving channels through the proto-continents and drowning the glowing fissures of volcanic plains. Waves taller than mountains crashed against the shores, eroding stone to silt and birthing the first coral cradles where life would one day teem. You can almost feel the chill spray of those primordial oceans, the salt-laden winds howling as Kyogre expanded the seas through primal terraforming, reshaping the planet's skin to favor fluidity over solidity. But Groudon would not yield. The land leviathan heaved upward, its dorsal plates grinding against the encroaching tides, thrusting molten bedrock skyward to form towering landmasses. Continents rose like the spines of some ancient behemoth, buckling and folding into mountain ranges that pierced the thickening clouds. Lava rivers cooled into basalt fortresses, ere fertile soils birthed from ash blanketed the highlands, and deep rifts yawned where the earth rebelled against submersion. Through this primal terraforming, the expansion of the seas met its match in the raising of continents, a symphony of creation that trembled the fledgling world to its core. Their ambitions clashed in cataclysmic harmony at first, seas receding from highlands, land masses dipping to cradle new inlets, but ambition turned to rivalry. Kyogre summoned endless rains and tidal surges, flooding valleys and turning plains to swamps, while Groudon scorched the waters with solar flares from its body, evaporating oceans to steam and baking the earth into cracked deserts. Storms of unprecedented fury brewed, lightning forking across bruised skies, hurricanes spiraling with the force to shatter stone. The atmosphere thickened with humidity and heat, weather patterns warping into chaos that threatened to unravel the delicate balance Dialga and Palkia had imposed. High above, in the fragile ozone veil that shielded the planet from cosmic rays, Rayquaza had taken its vigil, an emerald serpent coiling through the upper currents, guardian of the skies. It sensed the imbalance, the elemental war escalating into the first catastrophic weather war, where tempests raged without end and the planet's axis wobbled under the strain. Descending from the ozone layer like a comet of verdant fury, Rayquaza plunged into the fray, its mega-evolved form radiating draconic authority. With roars that parted the clouds, it mediated the conflict, forcing Kyogre into abyssal slumber and Groudon into cavernous repose, their powers held in precarious truce. In the hush that followed, the world exhaled oceans settling into their vast domains, continents solidifying into enduring plates, skies clearing to reveal stars untouched by turmoil. Yet scars remained, subduction zones where land eternally yields to sea, atolls ringing sunken peaks, and the ozone's faint shimmer bearing witness to Rayquaza's eternal watch. This terrestrial ballet set the stage for life's proliferation, but whispers persist of slumbers stirring once more, echoing in Hoenn's legends where orbs of red and blue hold the keys to awakening. These architects didn't craft in isolation, their forces intertwined with the cosmic energies rippling from Sinjoh's ancient clashes, where Dialga and Palkia's distortions scattered megastones like divine afterthoughts, empowering lesser beings to challenge godlike scales. In Paldea's shadowed crater, Seismic echoes of Gruden's upheavals formed Area Zero's depths 2 million years ago, cradling Terrapagos in crystalline vigil. Even Galar's skies, 20,000 years later, would darken under Eternatus's fall, a reminder that the planet's architects left legacies prone to human meddling, kings wielding swords of ruin, energies bottled for war. The balance they forged proves fragile, cyclical conflicts hinting at deeper designs. Forgotten heroes quelled similar storms, their tales buried like Unova's twin castles beneath ideals and truth. AZ's grief-fueled machine in Kalos, harnessing infinity energy to defy death, mirrors this hubris, weaponizing creation's echoes. As civilizations rose from Hisuian's first gym trials to Paldea's imperial probes into craters, these terrestrial forces slumbered, awaiting the next shift. But what colossal hand sculpted those newborn continents into migratory paths for ancient herds, hauling them across oceans in a single, earth-shaking stride? Coming up in Chapter 4, Regigigas and the shifting continents will uncover the continental drifter whose image echoes in Golem Guardians, pulling supercontinents apart and seeding the ruins that dot our maps today. You won't want to miss how it tamed the planet's wanderlust. With the continents thrust upward by Gruden's unyielding fury, the young world lay in chaos, massive slabs of earth drifting like shattered puzzle pieces across a steaming, primordial sea. These weren't the stable regions we know today, locked into place with borders and mountains. No, they floated, collided, and ground against each other in slow, cataclysmic dances that birthed volcanoes and drowned valleys. Something had to impose order on this tectonic frenzy, to drag those landmasses into the positions that would define Sinjoh, Hoenn, and beyond. That's where Regigigas enters the mythos, the Colossus Pokémon itself, a behemoth so vast it dwarfs mountains, its body carved from living stone, veins pulsing with the raw pulse of the planet's core. Legends whisper that this ancient titan awoke from the Earth's molten heart, its 7-inch yellow eyes flickering to life after eons of dormancy. Slow-moving yet unstoppable, Regigigas embodies the patient grind of geology made flesh. It didn't reshape the land through blasts of energy or primal roars. Instead, it labored with deliberate, godlike toil. Fashioning colossal ropes from the toughest clays and vines woven through the planet's deepest fissures, the Colossus Pokémon, Regigigas, pulls the landmasses into their regional positions using ropes. Picture the spectacle if you can feel it through the words, those immense cables, thick as ancient tree trunks, lashed around the edges of continents. Regigigas plants its feet, each one a slab broader than a stadium, and heaves. The ground quakes for miles, oceans slosh into tsunamis, and the air fills with the thunderous groan of stone yielding to force. Sinjoh's jagged peaks scrape into alignment first, then Hoenn's volcanic chains slot into place. Paldea's cratered expanse tugged southward. One by one, the landmasses lock into their destined forms, the ropes fraying and snapping only after the work is done, their remnants fossilized into the world's deepest caves. This wasn't destruction, it was architecture on a planetary scale, a single Pokémon playing surveyor, builder, and anchor all at once. But even a Colossus tires, or perhaps grows lonely in its vigil. Around 10,000 years before the rise of the first trainers, as the world began to cool and life clung to its edges, Regigigas turned its gaze inward. From the raw elemental materials scattered across its newly ordered domains, its sculpted companions, golems in its own image, tireless sentinels to guard the fragile balance it had forged. The creation of the first Regigolems, rock, ice and steel, from raw elemental materials marked the dawn of these artificial legends. Regirock came first, moulded from the unyielding clays of Sinjoh's highlands and the granite hearts of Hoenn's mountains. Its body, a patchwork of boulders fused by Regigigas' seismic grip, moves with the inexorable crunch of landslides. No wind or water erodes it. It's the essence of endurance, patrolling the badlands where the ropes once strained. Then Regis birthed from the glacial caps that crowned the northern continents post-pull, pure ancient ice compressed under unimaginable pressure, translucent blue and colder than the void between stars. Legends say its eyes glow with frozen light, and where it treads, blizzards follow, preserving the chill that stabilized the world's poles. Last of the trio, Regigigas, forged from magnetite ores dredged from the planet's metallic core, veins of superheated alloy hammered into a form that defies rust or fracture. Magnetic fields hum around it, pulling debris into armor as it wanders abandoned mines and shadowed chasms. These weren't mere statues. Regigigas breathed purpose into them, etching runes of command across their forms, symbols that pulse with the same tectonic rhythm as their creator. Together, the four Regi roamed the early world, quelling aftershocks from the Great Towing, shoring up crumbling coasts, and fending off the wild energies left by Kyogre and Groudon. Regirock anchored fault lines with its bulk. Regice flash-froze floodwaters into barriers. Registeel reinforced the planet's magnetic shield against cosmic storms. They were the maintenance crew of creation, silent giants ensuring the continents Regigigas positioned wouldn't drift back into chaos. Yet humanity, those first flickering sparks of civilization huddled in caves and along fertile coasts, watched this power with growing dread. As tribes grew into villages, stories spread of the earth trembling, not from nature's whims, but from the footsteps of the Colossus. Quakes that swallowed settlements whole, fissures that birthed chasms overnight. These weren't random, they were echoes of Regigigas' restless patrols. Fear turned to desperation. Warriors, shamans, even early kings rallied, their primitive machines and Pokémon allies no match for raw geology. In the end, it wasn't conquest that stopped the Titan, but cunning reverence laced with terror. Deep within what would become the Snowpoint Temple of Sinjoh, or perhaps the Regi Shrines of Hoenn, humanity devised a seal. Chanting ancient words drawn from the Golem's runes, they lured Regigigas into a chamber vast enough for its frame. Yellow eyes dimming to black dots, its signature slumber, they bound it not with ropes, but with the very elements it commanded. Walls of ice from Regis, steel lattices from Registeel, rock plugs from Regirock, all layered in a ritual that induced eternal rest. The sealing of Regigigas, as humanity began to fear its tectonic strength, preserved the world, but at the cost of forgetting the debt. Temples crumbled to ruins, golems wandered into obscurity, and the Colossus slept on, its chest rising and falling like distant thunder. Echoes of this era linger in the cracks of our maps, the Regi trio still sighted in remote wilds, their movements subtly shifting seabeds or stabilizing quakes. Some say if Regigigas ever stirs fully awake, those yellow eyes blazing, the continents could shift anew, redrawing borders in a single stride. But for now, the world holds steady, a testament to one Pokémon's labor and humanity's wary hand. And as the continents settled into their forms, teeming with potential beneath the cooling skies, something else stirred in the primordial ooze, a vital spark that would birth diversity itself. That's where we head next in Chapter 5, the spark of life and the Mew ancestry. What hidden ancestor weaves through every Pokémon we cherish, and how did it ignite the genetic dawn? Stay with me. You won't want to miss how it all comes alive. With the continents locked into place by Regigigas' unyielding grip, and those first towering Regi golems standing sentinel over ice, rock, and steel, the Pokémon world finally breathed. Vast landmasses stretched under a sky still raw from cosmic birth, oceans churned by Kyogre's endless surges, and mountains pierced the clouds where Groudon's fury had thrust them skyward. But amid this sculpted stillness, a faint shimmer stirred in the ether, a spark, delicate yet boundless, ready to ignite everything that would follow. That spark took form as Mew, the new species Pokémon, a ethereal wanderer born from the planet's primal essence. Tiny, pink, and impossibly agile, Mew floated through the warming air like a living dream, its body a vessel for the genetic code of all future Pokémon. This single ancestor, whispered in ancient Sinjoh myths as the progeny of Arceus' original intent, carried within its cells the blueprint for diversity itself. No mere creature, Mu was the bridge between the divine architects and the mortal hordes, proliferating across the young world in numbers that defied counting. They darted through steaming jungles, skimmed over newborn seas, and nestled in cavernous depths, their psychic essence weaving into the fabric of existence. Each Mu split and multiplied, a quiet explosion of potential, seeding the winds and waters with fragments of that universal DNA. You can almost feel it, the soft hum of their presence, like laughter echoing in an empty hall. As the planet cooled and its climates fractured into extremes, these Mu didn't just survive, they transformed. Environmental adaptation became the great sculptor, molding Mu's versatile genes into the first diversifications of species across the globe. In the sweltering tropics of what would become Kanto's forests, some Mu grew buoyant tails and fiery dispositions, evolving into the flickering forms of Charmander lines, their scales hardening against volcanic ash. High on plateaus destined for Johto's peaks, others burrowed deep, their bodies compacting into hardy shells that birthed Geodude's rocky kin, enduring landslides and quakes with stoic resolve. Picture the polar expanses, where Regigigas' frozen domains chilled the air to crystalline sharpness, Mu their adapted plush fur and icy blasts, giving rise to Spheal's rolling herds that carved glaciers into playgrounds. Deserts, born from Gruden's lingering heat in Hoenn's cradle, saw Mu elongate into serpentine shapes, Sandshrews' claws digging for hidden moisture amid endless dunes. Even the oceans, Kyogre's vast legacy, pulled Mu downward, their forms streamlining into Magikarp's leaps against relentless currents, a promise of draconic power yet to awaken. These weren't random mutations, but precise responses to the world's symphony of pressures: radiation from scattered meteorites, nutrient-rich soils from Regigigas' dragged earth, thermal vents bubbling with mineral life. Mu's proliferation ensured no corner remained barren, from Paldea's cratered wilds to Unova's buried ruins to be. Adaptation rippled outward, birthing Rattata in shadowy thickets, Pidgey in wind-swept skies, and Caterpie in leaf-veiled canopies. This was no chaotic scatter. Mu's psychic bond allowed collective intuition, a shared memory pulsing through the population, guiding divergences with eerie precision. In Sinnoh's blackened plateaus, where Dialga and Palkia's clash would later birth megastones, early Mu variants sensed the antimatter echoes from Giratina's realm, developing spectral auras that foreshadowed Ghastly's hauntings. Across Galar's future moors, some internalized Eternatus' distant fall, their energies coiling into Wooloo's fluffy resilience against brewing storms. The genetic code, that infinite library, forked and reforked, filling niches left by the deity's grand designs. What began as a singular spark now flickered in millions of forms, each adaptation a testament to life's relentless ingenuity. And in this proliferation, the true miracle unfolded, the transition from a world of singular deities to a world teeming with biological life. Those colossal beings, Arceus, Dialga, Palkia, Kyogre, Gruden, Regigigas, had forged the stage, but Mu populated it. No longer did the planet echo with only godly roars. Now it thrummed with the skitter of feet, the rustle of wings, the splash of fins. Herds migrated across freshly aligned continents. Ecosystems knit themselves into balance. Predators and prey danced in eternal cycles. Forests thickened with Oddish's nocturnal blooms, rivers teemed with Goldine's silver schools, skies filled with the first starly flocks tracing thermal updrafts. Humanity, still distant whispers on the horizon, would one day stumble into this bounty. But for now it was pure, untamed vitality, a biosphere born from one ancestor's dream. Yet even as life bloomed, shadows gathered in the void between stars. Whispers of a toxic eternity hurtling toward the world, an infinite poison that would test this fragile new order like never before. That cataclysm arrives in our next chapter, the arrival of the infinite poison, where a fallen star threatens to unravel everything Mu's legacy has built. Stay with me as we uncover how it all nearly ended before it truly began. As Mu's descendants spread across the young continents, Carving out niches in forests, oceans, and skies, a shadow pierced the heavens from beyond the stars. 20,000 years ago, something utterly alien hurtled toward the Galar region, a blazing streak that split the night sky like a wound in reality itself. This wasn't a mere meteorite born of the planet's own debris. No, this was Eternatus, the infinite poison, crashing into the earth with cataclysmic force, carving a vast scar into the landscape that would one day cradle the stadiums and cities of Galar. The ground trembled for days. You can almost feel it. The shockwaves rippling outward, toppling ancient trees and sending rivers bursting from their banks. Pokémon scattered in panic, herds of early Wooloo stampeding across the plains, while flocks of Rookide wheeled in chaotic spirals overhead. Dust clouds choked the sun, turning midday to twilight, and in the heart of the impact zone, a glowing crater pulsed with an otherworldly light. This was no ordinary collision. Eternatus' arrival unleashed a torrent of extraterrestrial energy, a boundless, writhing force unlike anything the planet had known, seeping into the soil like venom from a cosmic wound. That energy, raw and insatiable, began its subtle conquest immediately. It coursed through the roots of towering oaks, twisting their bark into crystalline veins that shimmered faintly under moonlight. Underground streams carried it deeper, infusing the aquifers with a strange vitality. Fish in those waters grew unnaturally large, their scales hardening into armor-like plates, precursors to the robust forms we'd recognize millennia later. Pokémon that ventured too close felt it first. A purloin lapping at a tainted puddle might swell momentarily, its body surging with power before collapsing in exhaustion, or a Nickit scavenging the crater's edge could unleash bursts of energy that scorched the earth. This wasn't life-giving spark like Mew's gentle divergence. It was invasive, Promethean, rewriting the rules of growth on a cellular level, hinting at the Dynamax phenomenon that would one day reshape battles across Galar. You see, this extraterrestrial infusion interacted with the planet's ecosystem in unpredictable waves. Local flora absorbed it greedily, birthing massive fruits that lured herds into the danger zone, only for the energy to mutate them. Imagine a dubwool herd where individuals ballooned to twice their size, their wool crackling with static, aggressive and unbound. Predators adapted too, Corviknight ancestors developing denser feathers to withstand the radiation, while burrowing forms like Dreepy emerged from caves altered, their ghostly trails leaving trails of shimmering poison gas. Yet it wasn't all empowerment. The poison aspect lingered, wilting swathes of grassland into barren wastes, driving migrations that reshaped food chains across the region. Scientists in Galar today whisper that this was the origin of Gigantamax potential, locked away in certain species' DNA, waiting for the right catalyst. But Eternatus itself didn't rampage endlessly. Exhausted from its interstellar journey, the entity burrowed deep beneath the Galar landmass, entering a dormant state that preserved its infinite core. There it slumbered, a colossal serpent of dark matter and boundless power, coiled in subterranean caverns far below the surface. The Darkest Day entity, as it would later be called, pulsed faintly, its energy diffusing slowly into the bedrock, influencing the very minerals that miners would one day unearth as max mushrooms. Generations of Pokémon lived and died above it, unaware of the ticking heart of chaos sealed away, its poison dreaming of awakening. This cosmic interloper marked a turning point. You know, where the pure organic evolution from Mew's legacy met something foreign, mechanical in its hunger. Humans weren't around yet to witness it directly, but the scars endured in folklore, in the oversized bones dug up by farmers and the erratic weather patterns that plagued early settlements. It set the stage for containment efforts millennia later, when kings and heroes would grapple with its resurgence. And as this alien force settled into quiet menace, another layer of the world's tapestry began to weave itself from subtler threads. That brings us to Chapter 7, the birth of the spirit, where ethereal guardians rise from the land's own soul, whispering secrets of balance that even Eternatus couldn't touch. What hidden forces stirred in response to this poison from the stars? Stay with me, because their emergence changes everything. As the infinite energy from Eternatus permeated the young planet's crust, seeping into hidden lakes across what would become the Sinjoh region, a profound awakening stirred beneath the still waters. 20,000 years had woven their subtle threads into the fabric of life, where Mu's descendants roamed in packs driven by raw hunger and evasion. Humans huddled in caves, etching crude symbols on stone walls, their eyes hollow with the grind of mere existence. But now, something deeper yearned to break free. From the glassy surface of Lake Acuity rose Uxie, the being of knowledge, its golden body shimmering like sunlight piercing fog, yellow gems pulsing with the weight of forgotten truths. Close by, in Lake Verity's rippling embrace, Mesprit emerged, a pink wisp of pure feeling, its tendrils trailing emotions too vast for instinct alone to contain. And from Lake Valor, as Alph ascended, azure and fierce, embodying the unyielding spark of willpower that could bend rivers and topple mountains. These lake guardians, Uxie, Mesprit, and Alph, emerged to grant sentient life the gifts of knowledge, emotion, and willpower, transforming the world's pulse from a frantic heartbeat into a symphony of purpose. You can almost feel the mist rising off those ancient lakes, cool and charged, as Uxie's gaze swept across the land, where before Pokémon fled shadows, or chased fleeting prey without thought of tomorrow, now patterns formed in their minds, memories stacking like stones into walls of understanding. A Pidgey no longer just soared on wind currents. It mapped the horizon, recalling safe perches from seasons past, plotting migrations that spanned continents. Humans too felt the shift, their grunts evolving into structured calls, hands crafting tools not from desperation, but from blueprints etched in newfound intellect. Uxie's gift was no gentle whisper. It flooded neural pathways, igniting curiosity that burned away the fog of animal survival. Mesprit danced through the air next, a presence a cascade of warmth and ache, flooding hearts with the full spectrum of emotion. Picture a young Riolu, once content to mirror its pack's snarls, now trembling with loyalty as it guards a fallen comrade, or swelling with joy at a shared hunt's triumph. Rage found temperance in understanding. Fear birthed courage through bonds forged in shared vulnerability. For early humans, this meant tears for lost kin, laughter echoing in firelit caves, love binding families beyond blood. Emotions wove tribes together, turning isolated wanderers into communities that sang under starlit skies, their voices carrying stories that lingered long after the flames died. As Alph arrived last, a tempest of resolve, infusing every creature with the iron will to act against the tide. Mountains yielded to determined scratches of a Geodude's claws, rivers parted for the relentless charge of a herd of Tauros. Humans stood taller, their tools sharpening into spears, their steps purposeful toward uncharted valleys. Willpower turned survival into ambition. Shelters rose from mud and branch, fires tamed for warmth and forge, migrations planned with eyes on fertile promises ahead. No longer slaves to whim, life asserted itself, carving niches in a world once ruled by chaos. This infusion marked the shift from instinctual survival to the development of early human Pokémon societies, where claws and hands worked side by side. In the misty vales of Sinjoh, the first villages sprouted like resilient weeds, huts of woven reeds circled by Pokémon dens, where a Luxio patrolled borders with electric vigilance, and children rode Ponyta backs, learning the land's rhythms. Trade routes emerged, berries bartered for sharpened stones, knowledge shared in gatherings where elders recounted Uxie's awakening under the full moon. Conflicts arose, yes, over scarce resources, but emotions tempered blades into plowshares, willpower built walls of alliance. These were no fleeting camps. They endured, roots delving deep into soil enriched by mutual reliance. Deep in those twilight councils, something even more miraculous unfolded. The first recorded instances of Pokémon and humans sharing a common language of the heart. It began with a glance, a Rhyperior rumbling low as a herder sensed its fatigue, easing the burden without a word. Telepathic echoes bridged minds, Uxie's intellect clarifying intent, Mesprit colouring it with feeling, as Alph fueling the resolve to respond. A Gardevoir whispered dreams to sleeping tribes, visions of bountiful hunts, and empath Starly conveyed warnings of storms, hearts sinking in urgent rhythm. No scripts or tongues were needed, just pulses of understanding that hummed through fur, skin, and scale, forging pacts that withstood famines and floods. These societies spread like ripples from the lakes, influencing distant shores. In what would be Johto, unknown swirls etched communal laws on cavern walls, humans and Pokémon deciphering them together. Hoenn's early clans rode Whalmer pods across newly formed seas, emotions binding rider to wave. Even Galar's rugged moors saw proto-villages where Eternatus tainted Yampa herds guided human flocks, their electric barks laced with willful camaraderie. Knowledge accumulated in oral tapestries, emotions in ritual dances, willpower in monumental standing stones aligned to celestial paths. Yet whispers persist of imbalances, knowledge hoarded sparking envy, unchecked emotions fueling feuds, willpower twisting into domination. The Guardians retreated to their depths, watching as these gifts ripened into civilizations both wondrous and fraught. Societies flourished, but shadows of conflict loomed, precursors to clashes that would scar the earth. And as these early bonds deepened, far to the south in Paldea, a colossal crater yawned open, its depths hiding secrets that would challenge even the spirit's endowments. In the next chapter, the Great Crater and the Mystery of Area Zero will descend into 2 million years of buried enigmas where ancient crystals pulse with powers that could rewrite everything you thought you knew about creation's hidden architects. With the dawn of knowledge, emotion, and willpower pulsing through early human hearts and Pokémon minds, societies began to stir across the continents, drawn to the land's most profound scars. In the heart of what would become Paldea, a colossal wound yawned open long before any footsteps echoed there. Seismic shifts 2 million years ago created the massive depression in the heart of Paldea, as if the earth itself recoiled from some primordial fury. Tectonic plates ground against each other with unimaginable force, fracturing the bedrock and swallowing vast swaths of land in a cataclysmic sinkhole. You can almost feel the rumble still, that deep guttural groan of the planet buckling under pressure, steam hissing from fissures as magma bubbled up, only to cool in jagged obsidian veins. This wasn't mere erosion or a lazy slump, it was a violent rebirth, carving out a crater so immense it dominates the horizon. Its steep walls plunging thousands of feet into shadow, ringed by sheer cliffs that defy climbers even today. Dust clouds billowed for months, blanketing the skies in grey, while rivers diverted their courses to pool at the bottom, forming labyrinthine depths that no light could fully pierce. Pokémon adapted swiftly to this new abyss, rock types burrowing into the fresh escarpments, flying types wheeling over the rim like sentinels. But beneath the surface turmoil, something far more ancient stirred. As the ground settled into its new form, Terrapagos descended into the chaos, drawn perhaps by the raw energy of the rupture, or fleeing some cosmic disturbance of its own. This enigmatic creature, a relic from eras predating even the first landmasses, tumbled into the widening moor, its shell aglow with an otherworldly luminescence. In the descent of Terrapagos and the crystallization of the underdepths, the crater's true secret took shape. The Pokémon's power interacted with the superheated minerals below, triggering a chain reaction that froze the subterranean chaos into crystalline splendor. Vast caverns filled with glittering geodes, walls veined in radiant quartz that pulsed faintly like a heartbeat, turning the underdepths into a hidden realm of frozen time. Layers upon layers of crystal formed, trapping air pockets from that ancient cataclysm, preserving echoes of the seismic roar in hollow chambers that hum when winds whisper through. Terrapagos nestled at the core, entering a dormancy that spanned epochs, its energy seeping outward like roots through soil. Explorers would later call this place Area Zero, but for 2 million years it slumbered in isolation, a forbidden heart beating silently amid Paldea's vibrant plains. As human Pokémon bonds strengthened elsewhere, whispers of the crater's treasure began to circulate, legends of lights dancing in the dark, stones that shimmered unnaturally. Yet, it was within these walls that the terrestrial phenomenon began as a localized anomaly, a quirk born from Terrapagos's latent influence mingling with the crystallized depths. At first, it manifested subtly. Pokémon near the crater's inner rims would catch glints of prismatic energy, their bodies briefly refracting light into dazzling spectra before reverting. A wild Tinkerton might swing its hammer and suddenly harden into a gem-like sheen, shrugging off blows that would shatter stone. Skeptics dismissed it as tricks of the cavern glow, but patterns emerged, crystals embedded in the walls acting as conduits, channeling Terrapagos's power into fleeting transformations. These weren't evolutions or mere glows. They were reconfigurations, types shifting like facets of a cut jewel, power surging from within. The anomaly stayed contained for ages, flickering sporadically along fault lines where the Earth still remembered its quake. Paldea's early inhabitants skirted the rim, building villages on safer slopes, their folklore painting the crater as the mouth of a sleeping giant, exhaling colourful breaths on moonless nights. 2,000 years ago, the Paldean Empire rose, fueled by ambition and those same myths. They launched the Great Age of Exploration, fleets of airships and climbers probing the edges, lured by tales of boundless wealth. Generations passed with partial descents teams vanishing into the mists, returning with shards that sparkled unnaturally or Pokémon forever changed. 200 years back, the Area Zero expedition finally pierced the veil, descending in steel-reinforced balloons and cable cars, their lanterns casting eerie rainbows on crystal spires. What they uncovered rewrote everything. The paradox Pokémon, frozen echoes of Terrapagos's kin, and the source of Terra energy itself. But the deeper they delved, the more the walls seemed to watch, terrestrial flares intensifying as if awakening to intruders. Heath, the expedition's leader, glimpsed the truth, but sealed his logs, knowing the power could upend the world. Today the crater stands as Paldea's enigma, a scar that birthed wonders and warnings. Trainers flock to its fringes, chasing terror shards that embed in their partners, unlocking those ancient refractions. Yet the underdepths guard their full mystery, Terrapagos stirring only when fates align, hinting at forces beyond even Arceus's gaze. As Paldea's story unfolds amid these glittering depths, shadows of older wars loom on distant shores, where human grief twisted infinite energies into weapons of annihilation. Up next in Chapter 9, the ancient War of Kalos will uncover how one king's despair unleashed a cataclysm that scarred the land forever, forcing legendaries into a desperate stand stick around, because the machine he built still echoes through time. As the crystalline underdepths of Paldea's great crater sealed themselves away, holding Terrapagos in eternal vigil, the world above began to pulse with a different kind of force, one forged not by legendaries, but by human hands. Eons drifted by, landmasses locked in place by Regigigas' ancient ropes, Mew's descendants branching into countless species, Eternatus' poison seeping into Galar's soil. Yet, it was in the lush, shadowed valleys of what we now call Kalos that ambition ignited like dry tinder under a summer sun. The Kalosian Empire didn't rise from nothing. It swelled from the fertile plains and mist-shrouded rivers, where early settlers tamed Pokémon not just as companions, but as engines of conquest. Picture grand spires of white stone piercing the sky, vineyards stretching endlessly under perpetual bloom, and armies marching with Furfrou at their flanks, their fur clipped into symbols of royal might. King Az ruled at its heart, a towering figure, clad in armor etched with floral motifs, his eyes sharp as a honage's edge. Under his reign, Kalos devoured neighboring lands, its banners fluttering over fallen fortresses from the rugged coasts to the distant mountains. Trade routes choked with gold and gems. Pokémon battles turned from sport to spectacle, fueling a war machine that hungered for more. But empires built on endless expansion breathed their own tempests. Whispers of resentment rippled across the continent as Kalos' shadow lengthened. Rival kingdoms, fierce warriors from the east with their dragon-riding hordes, seafaring clans from the south commanding fleets of Lapras banded together in defiance. What began as border skirmishes erupted into the ancient War of Kalos, a continental cataclysm that scorched the earth and choked the skies with smoke. Cities crumbled under the onslaught of Mega Ordino healers, turned berserkers. Rivers ran red with the blood of soldiers and their fallen partners alike. Forests that once echoed with Venipede's scuttles now rang with the clash of steel and the roars of enraged salamence, their flames devouring villages whole. This wasn't mere rivalry, it was annihilation, a war that threatened to redraw the map of the known world in ash. At the eye of this storm stood Azed himself, not just a king, but a man bound to a Pokémon in a way that defied the chaos around him. His eternal flower Floette, a delicate bloom eternal, its petals a radiant pink that never wilted, no matter the poison winds or battle's blight, had found him in his youth. She wasn't like other Floette, fragile and fleeting. This one carried the essence of infinity, a gift from some forgotten legend. A flower pulsing with life that mirrored Az's unyielding will. They were inseparable. Floette perched on his shoulder through council chambers and campfires, her gentle hums calming the warlord's tempers, her vines weaving shields in the thick of fray. Az spoke to her as confidant, her presence the one pure light in his crown of thorns. Together, they charged into the heart of battles, her petals unfurling to unleash gales that scattered enemy lines, his sword cleaving paths where her magic faltered. Their bond was legend even then, whispers among troops that as long as the eternal flower bloomed, Kalos would endure. Yet history pivots on the cruelest turns. Deep in the war's bloodiest theatre, amid a valley choked with the twisted husks of ancient trees and the cries of the dying, Floette met her end. Azes had sent her ahead to scout an enemy flank, her tiny form darting like a living petal through cannon fire and dragon pulse blasts. She returned victorious, vines heavy with captured banners, but pierced through by a stray cannonball from a rival kingdom's siege engine. The eternal flower dimmed in Azed's arms as she wilted at last, her final gaze locking with his, a silent plea swallowed by the din of war. He cradled her broken form amid the mud and thunder, the king who commanded legions reduced to a man keening over his lost light. That moment shattered something irreparable, not just a heart, but the fragile balance of power. Grief twisted into rage, and in Floette's death, the course of history veered into darkness no chronicle dared fully etch. The war raged on, but Azed's soul had fled the field. Villages that once cheered his name now huddled in fear of what brewed in the royal forges. Whispers spread of forbidden energies harnessed from the world's hidden veins, energies that could mock death itself. And as the empire teetered on oblivion's edge, one man's vengeance promised to unleash a force that would echo through the ages. But what Azay forged next, the ultimate weapon and the curse of immortality, would bind him to eternity in ways even his unbreakable flower could never have foreseen. How did grief birth a machine of gods and monsters, dooming Kalos to a legacy of haunted ruins? Stay with me as we uncover that shattering truth. But as the war raged on, tearing through the heart of Kalos like a relentless storm, tragedy struck Azed where it hurt most. His cherished Floette, that delicate eternal flower Pokémon glowing with an otherworldly light, fell in the chaos of battle, its petals wilting under the crush of steel and fire. You can almost feel the silence that followed, the way the battlefield's roar faded into a hollow echo for the king, his world narrowing to the lifeless form cradled in his armored hands. Grief twisted Az like a blade, unraveling the once noble ruler thread by thread. He locked himself away in the shadowed depths of his palace, surrounded by flickering torches and ancient tomes scavenged from forgotten ruins. Days blurred into nights, his eyes hollowed by obsession, whispering to himself about cheating death itself. Scientists and alchemists, once loyal advisors, now trembled at his command as he drove them mercilessly toward the impossible. Infinity energy, that shimmering, boundless force harvested from the world's hidden veins, the same power that pulsed through legendary Pokémon and warped reality, became his unholy grail. He poured it into a colossal machine, a towering construct of brass gears and crystalline conduits, humming with an unnatural blue glow that lit the chamber like a captured star. This life-giving machine rose from the palace underbelly, a miracle born of madness. Its core chamber cradled Floette's body, tendrils of energy weaving through the air like living veins, knitting petals and essence back together. AZ watched, unblinking, as the device thrummed to life, infinity energy surging in waves that shook the stone floors. And then, a miracle, Floette stirred, its glow returning brighter than before, eternal now, unbound by mortality. The king fell to his knees, tears carving paths through the grime on his face, believing he'd conquered death for them both. But victory in creation came laced with a darker hunger, one that festered in the endless war cries echoing from beyond the palace walls. Consumed by loss and rage, AZ saw no path to peace but annihilation. The machine, meant to restore life, twisted under his command into something apocalyptic. He retooled its heart, amplifying the infinity energy conduits until they screamed with overload, the blue light shifting to a venomous purple that scorched the air. Massive cannons erupted from its frame, siege engines capable of unleashing beams that could vaporize armies in an instant. No longer a cradle for the departed, it became a weapon of mass destruction, a harbinger powered by the infinite itself, drawing from Kalos's lifeblood to erase all opposition. Advisors begged him to stop, but madness had sealed his ears. He marched it to the war's front lines, the ground quaking under its weight, soldiers scattering like leaves before a gale. The ultimate weapon fired once, its beam slicing across the horizon like a god's judgment. Cities crumbled to ash, Pokémon and humans alike reduced to shadows etched into the earth, the infinity energy bloom erasing life on a scale that scarred the land forever. The war ended in that cataclysmic instant, both sides shattered, their banners trampled into oblivion. Silence blanketed Kalos, broken only by the machine's dying whine as its power core stabilized, having granted AZ not just revival, but immortality. He and Floette stood amid the ruins, eternal now, their bodies sustained by the very energy that had wrought such devastation. Yet, immortality proved no blessing. Floette, sensing the horror of what its resurrection had enabled, turned away in disgust, abandoning AZ to his hollow triumph. The king, forever unchanged, ageless wanderer, cursed by his own genius, roamed the wastelands of Kalos and beyond. Centuries passed, his footsteps echoing through forgotten battlefields. A ghost in golden armor seeking a forgiveness that never came, his machine dismantled and lost to myth. That curse lingers in the lore, a warning of tampering with infinity's edge. And as AZ's shadow fades into the annals of time, another cataclysm stirs in the ancient past, one that fractures the very fabric of Pokémon origins. Up next, Chapter 11, the splitting of the original dragon, where a single entity shatters into legends that reshape everything you thought you knew. Before we dive deeper into this incredible journey, I'm curious, where in the world are you watching this from? Drop a comment below and let our global community know. And if you're finding this as mind-blowing as I am, hit that like button to help more people discover this story. As the echoes of AZ's ultimate weapon faded into legend, leaving him to wander the world in immortal isolation, another ancient rift tore through the fabric of harmony, this time in the land that would become Unova. Buried deep beneath its bustling cities and rolling plains lie the shattered remnants of grand castles, built by rulers who once lived in perfect companionship with Pokémon. These fortresses, now entombed under layers of earth and time, stand as silent witnesses to a cataclysmic war sparked not by grief or greed, but by the unyielding clash of two brothers' visions for the future. These twin heroes of Unova embodied the eternal tension between cold, unvarnished truth and the soaring promise of ideals. The elder brother, relentless in his quest for absolute truth, sought to uncover every hidden reality, no matter how harsh or unforgiving. He believed that only by stripping away illusions could humanity and Pokémon alike ascend to true enlightenment. His counterpart, the younger sibling, chased ideals with fiery passion. a world reshaped not by what is, but by what could be. He dreamed of unity, progress, and boundless potential, forging societies where every soul could thrive beyond the limits of the present. Together, they ruled as companions to a singular dragon deity, a colossal being of raw, primordial power that embodied the original force of creation itself. This dragon, vast as mountains and radiant with otherworldly energy, had chosen them as its vessels, fueling their ambitions with its boundless might. But harmony fractured under the weight of their diverging paths. As their pursuits deepened, arguments escalated into betrayal. Castles crumbled under the strain of their Pokémon armies clashing in brutal, earth-shaking battles. The brothers, once inseparable, turned their wrath upon each other, each claiming the dragon as their rightful ally. The beast, torn between their irreconcilable desires, could no longer contain the paradox within its singular form. In a moment of cosmic agony, it sundered itself, its body splitting asunder in a blaze of white-hot light and pitch-black shadow. From this division emerged Reshiram, the vast white Pokémon embodiment of searing truth, its turbine wings humming with the fire of unyielding facts. Opposite it roared Zekrom, the vast black Pokémon, champion of ideals, crackling with electric fury that promised to electrify dreams into reality. The singular dragon deity splitting into Reshiram and Zekrom to satisfy both brothers marked the birth of Unova's deepest mythology, a divine compromise that quelled the war but left an indelible scar on the land. Each brother claimed their dragon, retreating to opposite ends of the region, Reshiram to the skies above the eastern deserts, Zekrom to the thunderous western mountains. Their castles sank into the earth, swallowed by the very ground they had ruled, as modern Unova rose oblivious above the ruins. Yet the division was not complete. What remained was an empty shell, a hollow husk drained of essence, the frozen, jagged form known as Kyurem, the boundary Pokémon. This creation of Kyurem, as the empty husk left behind by the division, wandered the frozen peaks of the giant chasm, yearning for wholeness, its cryogenic body a perpetual reminder of fractured unity. Legends whisper that Kyurem holds the potential to merge once more, absorbing the dragons of truth and ideals to reform the original deity. But such power tempts only the most ambitious hearts. In Unova's lore, this splitting echoes through every stone and shadow. The dragon's spiral tower, piercing the clouds like a bony spine, is said to be the very site where the dragon's body convulsed and tore apart. Its spiraling chambers, etched with ancient murals faded by millennia, depict the brothers' rise and fall, the elder with eyes like piercing flames, the younger with a gaze lost in visionary stars. Reshiram's flames burn pure and analytical, illuminating facts that scorch illusions away, while Zekrom's bolts forge paths through the unknown, charging forward on waves of possibility. Kyurem, stark and skeletal, drifts through blizzards with an insatiable hunger, its ice-cold breath freezing rivers into glassy tombs. Travelers in Unova still speak of chills that grip the soul near the chasm, as if the husk's void calls out, pulling at the edges of reality itself. This tale of division wasn't mere myth, it shaped Unova's soul. The buried castles birthed a new era, where humans and Pokémon learned wary coexistence, their bonds tempered by the memory of what unchecked ambition unleashes. Gym challenges, festivals, and even the Pokémon League trace roots back to this schism. Rituals designed to balance truth's clarity with ideals' inspiration. Artifacts like the DNA splicers, hidden in ancient relics, hint at Kyurem's latent fury, tools capable of forcing reunions that could either heal or devastate. And in quieter moments, sages ponder if the brothers' spirits linger, their conflict replayed in every trainer who chooses a path of ruthless strategy or hopeful innovation. As Unova healed from its ancient wound, shadows gathered far to the north, where a cosmic invader would unleash chaos on an unsuspecting kingdom. That story, the darkest day of Galar, awaits in Chapter 12, a storm of endless night that nearly swallowed a nation whole. As the flames of Unova's twin dragons faded into legend, the world turned its gaze elsewhere, to a land where the earth itself pulsed with hidden energies waiting to erupt. 3,000 years ago, deep beneath the rolling hills of Galar, an otherworldly behemoth stirred from eons of slumber. Eternatus, the colossal dragon that had plummeted from the stars 20,000 years prior, finally awakened in its ultimate form, Eternatus, unleashing a torrent of Galar particles that saturated the skies and poisoned the soil. You can almost feel the air thicken with that strange, shimmering haze, those microscopic motes of pure Dynamax energy flooding every corner of the region. Villages that once bustled with farmers tending wooloo herds and miners unearthing fossils suddenly found their world upended. Pokémon everywhere began to swell, their bodies warping and expanding under the influence of this surge. A humble Corvic knight, patrolling the skies over Hammerlock, ballooned to the size of a mountain, its wings blotting out the sun as it crashed through ancient stone bridges. Fields of Bunnelby burrowed, turned into craters from their suddenly gigantic forms rampaging unchecked, while packs of Rookadi swarms merged into feathered tempests that shredded treetops for miles. The phenomenon of Dynamaxing spread like wildfire across the countryside, transforming the idyllic Galar landscape into a nightmare of colossal destruction. Rivers overflowed as massive dreadnought chomped through dams, their jaws now capable of leveling entire hamlets. In the wilds near the Isle of Armor, Kubfu meditating in hidden dojos grew to titanic proportions, their fists shattering cliffsides in blind fury. Gigantamax evolutions emerged too. Imagine a Toxtricity, already a force of raw sound, amplifying into a serpentine colossus whose strums sent shockwaves that toppled the spires of Winden before it was even built. The black storm brewed at the heart of it all, a swirling vortex above the pit where Eternatus thrashed, drawing in more particles and fueling the endless cycle of growth and devastation. People fled their homes, whispering of the end times, as the ground quaked and the heavens wept irradiated rain that twisted flora into grotesque, oversized parodies of themselves. Panic gripped the land, but from the shadows of Galar's sacred groves, two legendary wolves answered the call. Zacian, the radiant blade wielder with fur like forged steel and eyes burning with righteous fury, bounded across the ravaged plains. Beside her raced Zamazenta, her shield-bearing counterpart, a bastion of unyielding defense cloaked in rusted armor that hummed with ancestral power. These weren't mere beasts, they were the guardians forged in Galar's primordial myths, embodiments of sword and shield united against oblivion. Guided by two brave human youths, ordinary souls thrust into heroism, they charged into the storm's maw. Picture the clash. Zacian's blade cleaved through tendrils of dark energy, each swing dispersing clouds of Galar particles like shattered glass. Zamazenta planted her massive frame, absorbing barrages from Eternatus's poisoned beams that would have vaporized armies. The youths, wielding relics of legend, a rusted sword and shield passed down through forgotten bloodlines, urged them onward, their voices cutting through the roar like beacons. Together, they pierced the core of the great storm, forcing Eternatus back into dormancy, sealing its power within the darkest pit. The sky cleared at dawn, the particles receding, Pokémon shrinking back to their natural states, as if awakening from a fever dream. Galar breathed again, its people hailing the two youths as kings, their reign marking the birth of a new era, yet shadows lingered in that victory. Eyewitnesses from afar, like the wandering eternal king, Az of Kalos, carried tales of the event, but history twisted the truth. The heroic wolves faded from songs, their deeds eclipsed by human crowns. What really happened to those guardians after the storm? And how did Galar rewrite its own salvation? That erasure sets the stage for Chapter 13, The Forgotten Kings and the Revision of History, where we'll uncover the deliberate veiling of Galar's true saviors and the kings who claimed their glory. You won't believe how deep the cover-up goes. As the black storm raged across Galar, swallowing fields in endless night and twisting Pokémon into colossal rampaging behemoths, hope seemed buried under miles of churning clouds. Eternatus hovered like a poisoned sun, its infinite energy poisoning the land with Galar particles that warped reality itself. Villages crumbled under the feet of Dynamaxed beasts. Rivers boiled into steam, and the air hummed with a deafening roar that shattered eardrums. Yet in this apocalypse, unlikely saviors emerged from the wild fringes. Two legendary wolves, Zatian and Zamazenta, guardians forged in the fires of Galar's ancient soul. These weren't mere beasts. Zacian, the radiant swordwolf, gleamed with rusted steel that hungered for battle, her form shifting into a blade-wielding fury when unsheathed. Zamazenta, the shield-buried brute, embodied unyielding defense, her massive pauldrons deflecting blows that could level mountains. They weren't alone. Flanking them were two human youths, barely out of boyhood, their faces smeared with mud and blood from weeks of evasion. One wielded a sword etched with runes of forgotten kings, the other a shield pulsing with the same arcane glow. These weren't trained knights or royal heirs. They were wanderers, survivors of raided hamlets, driven by a primal bond to the wolves that history would later try to bury. Together, they charged into the heart of the storm. Picture the clash, Zacian's blade slicing through Dynamax's energy like paper, carving paths of light through the darkness. Zamazenta rooted herself against a tidal wave of Gigantamaxed Corvignight, her shield absorbing impacts that echoed like thunderclaps across the realm. The youths fought in perfect sync, one darting forward to strike weak points exposed by the wolves' assaults, the other holding the line, barking commands that the legends obeyed without question. Eternatus lashed out with tendrils of pure void, but the quartet moved as one living weapon. The sword youth leaped onto Zacian's back mid-leap, plunging his rune blade into the core of a massive energy blast. The shield-bearer anchored Zamazenta's flank, their combined roar shaking the beast's focus just long enough for the wolves to land the decisive blows. Zacian's final severed Eternatus's infinite growth, forcing it to shrink and collapse into a slumbering husk. Zamazenta's shield bash sealed the wound, containing the Galar particles in a barrier that would echo through the ages as the darkest days end. The storm parted at dawn, revealing a scarred but breathing Galar. Cheers erupted from huddled survivors as the heroes stood atop the fallen titan, wolves at their sides, silhouetted against the rising sun. In that moment, the youths who fought alongside the legendary wolves claimed the throne, not through birthright or conquest, but through raw valor witnessed by thousands. Crowds knelt before them, hailing them as the new kings, their wolves as divine patrons. Thrones were hastily carved from the Dynamax rubble, crowns forged from Eternatus's crystallized remains. The duo established the first unified Galar monarchy, their rule promising protection from such cataclysms, with Zacian and Zamazenta enshrined as eternal sentinels in the royal citadel. But glory fades, and power corrupts narratives. As decades turn to centuries, the new kings, now aging into wise but ambitious rulers, faced the challenge of legitimacy. Their bloodline needed roots deeper than a single battle. Scribes in the royal archives began a quiet purge. Tapestries depicting the wolves' glory were mothballed in damp vaults. Stone carvings of Zacian and Zamazenta charging into the storm were chiseled smooth, replaced with heroic statues of the kings alone, swords and shields in hand. Ballads sung by bards shifted lyrics overnight. Where once choruses praised wolf and man as brothers in steel, they morphed into solos glorifying the twin sovereigns who felled the Sky Devil. Official chronicles penned under royal decree described the darkest day as a trial overcome by human ingenuity alone, the wolves reduced to metaphors, fanciful beasts tamed by the crown's will. This systematic erasure of Zacian and Zamazenta from Galarian historical records wasn't haphazard. It was methodical, enforced by edicts that burned older texts and exiled storytellers who clung to the truth. Temples once dedicated to the wolves became royal mausoleums. The wolves themselves, after aiding in the containment of Eternatus beneath Hammerlocker Stadium, vanished into legend, perhaps retreating to wild realms, perhaps sealed away by the very kings they elevated. Az, the wandering immortal king of Kalos, who had witnessed the event from afar, carried whispers of the truth, but his ramblings were dismissed as madman's tales. Generations grew up reciting sanitized histories, where Dynamax was a gift from the throne, not a curse quelled by beasts. What began as hero worship twisted into the transformation of myth into political propaganda for the royal bloodline. The king's descendants wove the darkest day into their crest, a stylized sword and shield, echoing the wolf's forms but stripped of fur and fang. Festivals celebrated the founder's triumph, with costumed performers reenacting battles sans Pokémon allies. Dynasties rose and fell, each layering fresh varnish. One era claimed the kings communed with Arceus itself, another invented divine ancestry from ancient Galar spirits. Textbooks in Winden academies taught that the monarchy's stability prevented future apocalypses, crediting human strategy over lupine might. Even the Galar League's champions, channeling Dynamax in stadiums built on those scarred grounds, unknowingly perpetuated the lie, power derived from particles the wolves had contained. You can still trace the erasure in the cracks of history. Faded murals in slumbering wheeled caves show blurred wolf shapes beside crowned figures. Folklore from rural folk clings to tales of sword sisters and shield kin who sleep until Galar needs them again. The royals' own genealogy scrolls, guarded in crown tundra vaults, hint at unease, gaps where wolf pacts should bind the line. This revision wasn't just forgetfulness, it was survival. By claiming sole credit, the bloodline ensured loyalty flowed upward, unchallenged by the wild divinity of Pokémon legends. And as Galar rebuilt on these rewritten foundations, echoes of other forgotten intersections lingered far beyond its borders, places where human histories collided with divine migrations, birthing enigmas that reshaped entire regions. Next, in Chapter 14, the Sinjoh ruins and the intersection of cultures, we'll uncover how ancient portals fused worlds in ways that still pulse beneath the surface, threatening to rewrite everything we thought we knew. While Galar's scribes scrubbed the wolves from the annals, etching human crowns into stone that would outlast the truth, another corner of the world preserved its secrets in ruins untouched by revisionist hands. Nestled in a liminal space where Johto's misty peaks bleed into Sinnoh's jagged horizons, the Sinjoh ruins stand as silent witnesses to a forgotten crossroads, a place where ancient peoples crossed vast seas and treacherous passes, forging bonds that echoed the divine. You can almost feel the chill wind whipping through those fog-shrouded valleys, carrying whispers of migrations that spanned generations. Picture weary travelers from Sinnoh's frozen north, their cloaks heavy with frost, trudging southward into Johto's verdant embrace. These weren't mere wanderers, they were bearers of sacred knowledge, fleeing cataclysms or chasing visions of harmony between realms. Archaeological digs reveal pottery shards, etched with motifs of swirling time streams and spatial distortions, identical to those unearthed in Sinnoh's spear pillar remnants. Carbon dating places their journeys around 1,500 years before the modern era, coinciding with the rise of enigmatic structures like the ruins of Alph. They brought tools of bone and obsidian, tales of Dialga's unyielding clockwork heart and Palkia's boundless voids, blending them with Johto's own spirit guardians. As these migrants settled in the Sinjoh Basin, a natural amphitheater carved by primordial floods, they didn't just build homes, they erected temples that pulsed with otherworldly reverence. Towering torii gates, arched like welcoming arms from Shinto shrines of a distant inspiration, flanked pathways of polished granite. Lanterns of luminous pearl hung from eaves, glowing faintly even in excavation photos, as if fueled by residual energy. At the ruin's core, twin altars rose like frozen waves, one etched with hourglass fractals symbolizing the relentless march of time, the other riddled with interlocking voids evoking infinite expanse. These weren't decorations, they were the construction of Shinto-inspired altars to honor the creators of time and space themselves, Dialga and Palkia, whose cataclysmic clash millennia earlier had scarred Sinnoh's blackened plateau and scattered megastones like divine afterthoughts. Rituals unfolded here under starlit skies, where priests in flowing robes chanted invocations that hummed through the earth. Smoke from incense braziers curled upward, mingling with the metallic tang of spatial distortions, drawing pilgrims who believed the altars could glimpse the Alph's original Sinjoh, the dawn of creation. Fragments of murals depict processions winding from Sinjoh's lakes to Johto's shores, offerings of crystal orbs placed at the altar's feet to appease the deities and prevent another vortex of fire and lightning. The air would thicken during these ceremonies, time dilating as participants felt the fabric of reality stretch, a tangible brush with the infinite. And woven into this tapestry of devotion lies the most tantalizing artifact yet, the Arceus flute. Unearthed in a sealed chamber beneath the eastern altar, its golden reed gleams with an unnatural luster, inlaid with plates that shift hues under light, azure for space, crimson for time, obsidian for antimatter. Spectrographic analysis shows alloys unknown to ancient metallurgy, laced with traces of the same energy that birthed Giratina's distortion world. Inscriptions nearby describe its role in ancient rituals. Blown in precise sequences during solstice alignments, the flute summoned phantasmal echoes of Arceus itself, manifesting pillars of light that reshaped the ruin's very stone. One sequence, pieced from fragmented tablets, reportedly conjured Dialga's roar, bending hours into loops where offerings multiplied eternally. Another warped space, folding distant Sinjoh artifacts into the altars, as if the regions were one. Was this flute a key to the Alpha Pokemon's forge? Or a desperate tool to heal the rift between truth and ideals that once sundered dragons in Unova? Modern scholars whisper of recreating its tones, but the ruins guard their full melody jealously. These intersections weren't accidents. The migrants carried blueprints etched on hides, blending Sinjoh's stark monoliths with Johto's harmonious curves, creating a hybrid sanctity that outlived empires. Far-fetched bones nearby, picked clean from overhunting feasts, mark the era's human ambition clashing with nature's balance, much like AZ's grief-fueled machine centuries later. Yet the Sinjoh ruins endured, a cultural nexus where forgotten heroes weren't erased, but entombed in reverence, their migrations etching permanent grooves in the world's mythic bedrock. Excavators still sift through layers of ash and crystal today, uncovering beads strung with Dialga scales, real ones, petrified by temporal flux. Each find peels back another veil, hinting at rituals that might awaken dormant powers even now. But as the dust settles on Sinjoh's altars, our path veers toward Johto's whispering chambers, where the ruins of Alph and the unknown cipher await, promising a code that could rewrite everything we think we know about the unseen forces scripting our reality. As these ancient migrants from Sinjoh wove their Shinto-inspired altars into the fabric of Johto's landscape, they carried whispers of deeper enigmas southward, toward the shadowed valleys west of Violet City. There, 1,500 years before the Kanto Leagues ignited, stonemasons carved the ruins of Alph from sheer granite cliffs, their chambers twisting like veins beneath the earth. You can almost feel the chisel marks under your fingertips, rough and deliberate, as if the builders hurried against some encroaching doom. 4 main rooms burrow into the hillside, each sealed behind a sliding stone slab that only yields to specific Pokémon cries. Hoot Hoot's nocturnal hoot for one, Natu's rhythmic pulse for another. Inside, walls pulse with carvings not of beasts or heroes, but of eyes, endless, unblinking eyes that seem to follow your gaze, forming letters, symbols, a script older than spoken tongues. These are the unknown, those ethereal Pokémon first glimpsed in the ruins' depths, floating like living glyphs amid dust motes and faint bioluminescent glow. Over 40 forms they take, from A to Z and beyond, twisting into punctuation marks and question loops, their bodies mere outlines filled with void black curiosity. Trainers who venture too deep report headaches, visions of fractured realities, landscapes folding into impossible geometries, skies raining shards of forgotten alphabets. What drove these civilizations to such extremes? Picture laboring generations etching these puzzles, not for glory, but for safeguarding. The chambers weren't tombs or treasuries, they were vaults against catastrophe. Legend holds that unknown possess a power to warp the weave of existence itself, summoning portals or reshaping matter with mere collective intent. In the Pokémon movies, a young girl's despair unleashed them en masse, birthing a nightmarish dimension from her grief, proof that unchecked, their script could unravel the world. That's why the puzzles exist, intricate locks demanding harmony between human will, Pokémon song, and cosmic alignment. Only the worthy, those attuned to the ruins' rhythm, could access the inner sanctum, where Unown nested in swarms, their forms interlocking like a living cipher. Ancient guardians feared what outsiders might do with such force, summoning rifts to other realms, or worse, binding the script to weapons of war, much like Az's fateful machine centuries later. Delve deeper into the lore, and the Unown reveal ties to the primordial forces that birthed reality. Scattered across Johto, Hoenn's Tanabe ruins, and Sinnoh's Solaceon depths, these sites form a global network, chambers attuned to elemental plates, fire-etched walls in one, psychic hum in another. Researchers whisper of a mysterious connection between the Unown and the fundamental building blocks of reality, as if these Pokémon embody the raw code of the universe, types as quanta, forms as variables in Arceus's grand equation. Consider the plates themselves, those 17 artifacts channeling creation's energies, mirroring Unown's type-shifting versatility. When Arceus descended in Sinnoh myths, it wielded them to shape land, sea, and sky. Unown, in turn, might scribe that genesis, their symbols etching the boundaries between chaos and form. One prevailing theory casts them as the visual language of Arceus's power, a dialect of divine intent. Each glyph a syllable of the original one's will, capable of invoking Dialga's timelines or Palkia's voids when arrayed correctly. Evidence glimmers in the ruins' radio signals, faint transmissions picked up by explorers, broadcasting unknown chants that disrupt electronics, bend light into holographic projections. In Alph's research chamber, align the puzzles just so, and murals animate, Arceus silhouetted against a starry egg, Unown spiraling outward like emanations from its core. It's no coincidence these ruins rose 1,500 years ago, amid the Regigigas' forging and far-fetched hunts, a time when humanity grasped at godhood, necessitating wards against powers too potent for mortal hands. Venturing into the Tanabe chain off Sevi Islands, you find chambers keyed to water's flow, demanding Goldeen schools to activate submerged doors. Solaceon in Sinnoh hides Unown amid ruin maniac digs, their presence warping cave echoes into prophetic murmurs. Everywhere, the pattern repeats, puzzles as peril, protecting a lexicon that could rewrite existence. Scholars debate if Unown predate Arceus or emerged from its thousand arms, but the cipher endures, a puzzle within the greater Pokémon enigma. Trainers who've captured full sets report synchronicities, Pokédex entries materializing unbidden, battles turning on improbable symbol formations. Yet the ruins stand silent most days, their eyes watchful, waiting for the next alignment. And as Johto's secrets fade into mist-shrouded mornings, our journey pulls westward across oceans to arid plateaus where empires clawed treasure from craters 2,000 years ago. In Chapter 16, The Rise of the Paldean Empire, uncover how explorers pierced the great crater's heart, unearthing crystals that pulse with forgotten eternities. What cataclysmic power did they awaken, and how does it echo the Unown's veiled script? As the ancient builders of the ruins of Alph sealed away the Unown's enigmatic script, guarding the very threads of reality itself, whispers of even greater secrets began to stir across distant lands. In the sun-baked hills of Paldea, a new power emerged, one forged not from puzzles or ciphers, but from unyielding royal ambition. 2,000 years before our modern tales unfold, the Paldean monarchs rose to claim dominion over the rugged peninsula, their banners fluttering against the endless azure skies. These were no mere rulers, they were visionaries who united fractious tribes under a single crown, their palaces carved from golden stone overlooking vineyards that stretched like emerald rivers toward the horizon. Paldea, with its wild coasts battered by trade winds and mountains veined with glittering ore, became the heart of an empire that hungered for the unknown. This marked the dawn of the Great Age of Exploration, a relentless push outward, where fleets of sturdy galleons sliced through foaming waves, charting unclaimed islands and bartering with far-flung peoples who spoke of gods in the deep. Yet amid this outward gaze, the monarch's eyes turned inward, fixated on a forbidden scar upon their own soil, the Great Crater, that colossal wound gouged into the Earth's flank, rimmed by jagged peaks that clawed at the clouds. Legends spoke of a treasure buried in its depths, a prize so profound it could grant eternal prosperity, or perhaps dominion over the stars themselves. Whispers from nomadic herders claimed it was the crystallized heart of the world, pulsing with energies older than the mountains. The first king, they say, dreamed of it nightly, his visions filled with radiant shards that promised to eclipse even the sun. Courtiers pored over faded maps. Scholars debated ancient poems etched into cave walls, all converging on one truth. Whatever lay hidden within the Great Crater held the key to Paldea's supremacy. Expeditions became royal obsessions, funded by treasuries emptied of gold, with the finest scouts, scholars, and Pokémon trainers pledged to the crown's unquenchable thirst. The early ventures into the crater were tales of hubris met with horror. Parties equipped with ropes woven from Tinkerton steel and lanterns fueled by lumberry oil descended the treacherous slopes, their boots crunching over obsidian shards that hummed faintly underfoot. But as they plunged deeper, a perpetual mist rose to greet them, thick, silvery veils that swallowed sound and sight alike, carrying the chill breath of forgotten epochs. Voices echoed unnaturally from the fog, not human, but guttural roars that shook the ground. Survivors staggered back days later, their eyes hollow, babbling of colossal shapes lurking in the haze. Serpentine behemoths with scales like fractured diamonds, winged horrors that blotted out fleeting glimpses of sunlight, and shadows that moved with predatory intelligence, guardians of the treasure none could claim. One infamous expedition, led by the third monarch's own brother, vanished entirely after breaching the mist's outer veil. Rescuers found only a single journal page, smeared with ink and what might have been blood, describing monsters born of the crater's womb, twisted by powers that warp flesh and stone. Legends proliferated from there, tales of the crater beasts, immortal sentinels awakened by greedy footsteps, their eyes glowing with the same eerie light as the unowned script. Fishermen along Paldea's coasts swore they saw the mist spill over the rim on moonless nights, depositing strange iridescent scales on the beaches. The monarchs pressed on regardless, their obsession deepening into a national fervor. Festivals honored fallen explorers, ballads romanticized the peril, yet each failure only amplified the treasure's allure. What could drive such relentless pursuit, if not the promise of reshaping destiny itself? Generations passed under this shadow, the Empire's explorers mapping every cove and peak while the crater's secrets mocked them from afar. Paldean society evolved around this enigma. Academies trained geologists to probe its edges, artists depicted the mist as a living entity, jealous of its hoard. Pokémon like Glalie and Altaria were tamed specifically for their affinity with fog-shrouded realms, yet even they recoiled at the crater's pull. The monarch's lineage wove the quest into their bloodline, each successor vowing to succeed where predecessors faltered, their courts alive with debates over new routes, through lava tubes that belched sulphurous fumes, or across rope bridges swaying over abyssal drops. By the time the Empire had endured 2,000 years of such unyielding reign, the Great Age of Exploration had transformed Paldea into a nexus of knowledge, its ports bustling with tales from Johto's ruins and Sinjoh's plateaus. But the crater remained unconquered, its mist a perpetual shroud, birthing ever more vivid legends of those monstrous defenders, creatures said to embody the Earth's rage, warped by the same primordial forces that birthed the unknown. What horrors truly guarded that treasure, and why did the land itself seem to conspire against revelation? These unanswered riddles echoed across the seas, drawing the eyes of sailors towards stranger waters, where ships met fates even more cataclysmic. Up next in Chapter 17, The cataclysm of the sea Mauville will uncover a maritime disaster that swallowed an entire vessel in flames and mystery, hinting at energies far deadlier than any crater mist. Stay with me as the waves turn treacherous. As the Chaldean monarchs poured their fortunes into probing the great crater's forbidden depths, chasing whispers of unimaginable treasure, another corner of the world was hurtling toward its own reckoning with hidden powers. In Hisuian, the relentless march of the industrial era was carving brutal scars across paradise. Verdant routes once teeming with wild Pokémon gave way to sprawling factories belching smoke into skies that had known only Wingle's graceful arcs. Slateport's docks swelled with cargo ships hauling ore from distant mines, while Mauville City's electric veins pulsed brighter, demanding ever more power to fuel its glittering ambitions. You can almost taste the salt-laced air thickening with diesel fumes as massive rigs dredged the ocean floor off Route 128. Coral reefs that had sheltered clampearl and huntail for eons shattered under the weight of construction cranes. The natural habitats of Hisuian, those intricate underwater gardens where relicanth glided like living fossils through sun-dappled currents, were bulldozed in the name of progress. Developers dreamed of harnessing the sea's fury for boundless electricity, erecting the sea Mauville, a colossal floating fortress masquerading as a research vessel, its hull humming with experimental reactors. It bobbed there like a mechanical leviathan, promising to tame the waves into submission, to light every home from Lily Cove to Laveridge without end. But the sea doesn't yield easily. Deep beneath the churning surface, where pressure crushes steel as easily as shells, the first tremors stirred. Engineers, blinded by visions of infinite energy, had pierced too far. Their drills unearthed not just sediment, but relics from Hisuian's primordial dawn, fossils of creatures long vanished, twisted spirals of Anorith and armored skulls of Armaldo locked in stone for millions of years. These weren't mere curiosities. They pulsed with echoes of a world before continents clashed, before the skies wept endless rain. The discovery ignited a frenzy. Devon Corporation, Hisuian's titan of innovation, seized the finds, rushing them to see Mauville's sterile labs. Scientists huddled over glowing revival machines, debating in hushed tones whether to shatter the silence of extinction. Should they breathe life back into these ancient ghosts? The ethical dilemmas tore through the research teams like a dive attack. Reviving Lilip or Cradley meant playing creators, meddling with nature's brutal cull. What right did humans have to drag species from oblivion, unleashing them into oceans already strained by pollution? Would these reborn Pokémon thrive, or become invasive predators, toppling fragile ecosystems? Whispers spread of failed experiments, Pokémon emerging malformed, their primal instincts warped by the revival process, lashing out in agony against their human saviors. One technician's log, smuggled out before the blackout, described a Cranidos rampaging through corridors, its stone hide cracking bulkheads as it bellowed for a world that no longer existed. The air grew heavy with doubt. Were they guardians of history, or arrogant thieves robbing the dead of their peace? Yet, ambition drowned the warnings. The real catastrophe brewed in the fusion of fossil energies with the plant's core reactors. Hisuian's modern energy needs, those insatiable factories, those neon-lit metropolises, pushed the sea Mauville to its limits. Engineers tinkered with the fossil's latent power, blending it with salvaged meteorite shards, seeking a breakthrough. Unbeknownst to them, they brushed against something far older, the primal energies that once fueled Kyogre's deluge and Gruden's blaze. Red and blue resonances hummed within the stones, the same forces that birthed Hisuian's primal storms. The link was forged in hubris, contemporary power grids, tapping into cataclysmic sources, awakening slivers of that ancient rage. It happened on a moonless night, when the ocean floor groaned like a waking behemoth. Alarms shrieked as reactors overloaded, fossil revival chambers erupting in geysers of raw energy. The sea Mauville listed violently, its decks flooding with bioluminescent ooze that glowed like captured auroras. Pokémon fled in panic, Wailord breaching the surface in terror, Sharpedo slicing through debris. The cataclysm swallowed the vessel whole, dragging it to the abyss in a vortex of steam and lightning. What rose in its wake was a poisoned graveyard, currents choked with radioactive silt, marine life mutating into shadowed horrors, habitats shattered beyond repair. Divers who braved the ruins decades later spoke of halls lined with half-revived skeletons, eye sockets flickering with unnatural light, as if the ancient Pokémon still yearned for vengeance. The fallout reshaped Hoenn's soul. Devon buried the truth under layers of bureaucracy, but the scars lingered, Route 128's waters forever tainted, a cautionary reef where fossil echoes whispered warnings to the bold. That desperate quest for energy had cracked open doors to primal fury, hinting at the tempests yet to come. And as we turn our gaze northward, to the rugged Hisuian frontier and the first Pokédex, you'll uncover how one scholar's catalogue would redefine our bond with these ancient mysteries forever. As the dust settled from Hoenn's fossil digs, where scientists wrestled with the ghosts of revival and ruin, humanity's dance with Pokémon took us even further back to a wild, untamed frontier where the very idea of partnership was born from the jaws of terror. You can almost feel the chill winds whipping across the jagged peaks of Hisui, that ancient cradle of what we now call Sinjoh. This wasn't the polished leagues of today. It was raw survival, where settlers from distant lands washed ashore on ragged coasts, their ships splintered by storms that seemed alive with fury. Pokémon weren't companions here. They were the land's wrath made flesh, hulking shadows crashing through misty forests, their roars echoing like thunder gods at war. Villages huddled in fear, barricades thrown up against nocturnal raids, whispers of monsters passing from firelit tent to tent. Into this chaos stepped the Galaxy Expedition team, a band of visionaries driven not by conquest but by curiosity. Picture them, cloaked figures with lanterns flickering against the dusk, notebooks clutched like talismans, trekking through blizzards and bogs under a leader who saw potential where others saw peril. They weren't warriors or kings, they were explorers, charting the unknown with ink and resolve. From their makeshift camps rose Jubilife village, hammered together from felled timbers and stubborn hope. First a cluster of thatched roofs around a central hearth, then sturdy walls enclosing forges and granaries. It became the heartbeat of Hisui, a beacon drawing more souls from the sea, transforming scattered refugees into a fledgling society. But fear lingered like fog in the valleys. A Bidoof might topple a cart with a single charge. A pack of Shinx could ignite the night with electric fury. Early journals, brim with tales of loss. Children snatched by Staraptor talons, fields ravaged by rampaging Rhyhorn. Yet something shifted in those galaxy halls amid the glow of oil lamps and the scratch of quills on parchment. What if these monsters held secrets worth unlocking? What if studying their habits, sketching their forms, could turn predators into allies? That spark ignited the transition from fearing Pokémon as mindless beasts to embracing them as partners, worthy of respect and reciprocity. No longer hunted or shunned, they were observed, habits noted at dawn, behaviors mapped under starlight, proving that beneath the ferocity beat hearts, attuned to the world's rhythm. At the vanguard of this revelation stood the first Survey Corps, hand-picked from the boldest galaxy ranks. These weren't idle scribes, they were the pioneers of the Pokédex, fanning out into the wilds with little more than satchels of paper and unyielding grit. Their mission zeroed in on the noble Pokémon, those majestic wardens of Hisui's realms, like the cleaver that cleaved mountains with scythe arms, or the Avalugg guarding icy passes with glacial might. You'd hear their footsteps crunching over frostbitten trails, breaths held as they circled a noble from afar, capturing not just silhouettes but essences. The way Hisuian Gudra's slime healed wounds in the gloom, or how Electrode's spins summoned storms to shield groves. Entry by painstaking entry, they documented these sovereigns, noting lairs etched into cliffsides, rituals under auroras, bonds with the land that whispered of deeper lore. Jubilife swelled around these efforts, its streets alive with core returnees swapping sketches over stew pots, their findings compiled into the primordial Pokédex, a humble ledger that would echo through eras. Blacksmiths forged Pokeballs from apricorn husks, not as cages but invitations. Farmers coaxed crops from tamed herds. The air hummed with change. Children now laughed as Wurmple wove silks for sails. Elders shared fires with wary Growlithe. This was no accident. It was deliberate evolution, Hisuian's gift to the world, where the first gym challenge took root in village trials, testing human Pokémon synergy against the wild's unyielding test. Yet shadows stirred beyond the village glow. Whispers from the peaks spoke of frenzied eyes in the dark, of chains forged from crimson ore to bind the heavens themselves. What catastrophe brewed at Spear Pillar, demanding such desperate measures? That tale, in the Red Chain and the Spear Pillar incident, pulls us deeper into Hisuian's unraveling heart. Don't drift off just yet. As the Galaxy Expedition team pushed deeper into Hisuian's wilds, cataloguing Pokémon not as beasts to fear, but as enigmas to understand, they couldn't have known the land beneath their feet still bore the raw wounds of a cataclysm older than memory itself. You see, long before Jubilife Village took shape, before humans even dared to name the creatures around them, the heart of what we now call Sinjoh trembled under the fury of gods at war. High atop Mount Coronet, where the Spear Pillar now stands as a jagged throne piercing the clouds, ancient people of the region gathered in desperate reverence. These were the precursors to Hisuian's clans, driven by a hubris that whispered they could tame the untamable. Dialga, the colossal embodiment of time itself, its scales etched with the relentless march of seconds and eons, and Palkia, the spatial sovereign whose very presence warped the fabric of distance and dimension, they clashed in a battle that sundered reality. Legends etched into the stone walls of Sinjoh's shrines tell of how these deities, born from Arceus's primal will, turned their primal forces against each other, unraveling the threads that held the world steady. But humanity didn't stand idle. Forged in secrecy from the shimmering plates, said to be fragments of the original one, they crafted the Red Chain, a crimson artifact pulsing with forbidden power, designed to pierce divine flesh and bind the gods in eternal servitude. Picture the ritual. Elders chanting under blood-red skies, their voices rising like smoke from sacrificial fires as they hurled the chain toward the titans locked in combat. The links, unbreakable and alive with arcane energy, latched onto Dialga and Palkia, yanking them earthward in a bid to chain eternity and infinity to mortal command. For a fleeting moment, it seemed they had succeeded. The gods roared in unison, their forms momentarily subdued, the pillar's stones cracking under the weight of restrained divinity. Yet such arrogance invites apocalypse. The Red Chain shattered under the strain, its failure unleashing a backlash that scarred the Sinjoh landscape forever. Fissures tore through the earth like veins of lightning, Mount Coronet's peak fracturing into the multi-tiered ruins we know today, where wind howls through eternal gaps and mist clings like spectral regret. This wasn't mere destruction. It birthed the space-time distortions, rifts in the veil between eras, pockets where the laws of chronology collapsed into swirling chaos. Feel the chill of that moment, the air thickening with temporal static, the ground buckling as pockets of reality folded in on themselves, leaving behind warped plateaus and hidden valleys that defy the sun's path. These distortions didn't just mar the land, they became doorways to the impossible. Pokémon from epochs long buried began to bleed into the present, hulking behemoths from a prehistoric age, their bones armored in stone forgotten by evolution, tumbling through tears alongside spectral forms from futures yet unborn, phasing in and out like ghosts of what might be. Wanderers in ancient Hisuian spoke of sudden storms birthing Weirdeer from the feudal wilds, or Overquill surging from abyssal depths that hadn't existed for millennia. You could be foraging berries one dawn, only to find a Sneasler dropping from a rift above, its claws dripping with the venom of vanished eras, or a Porygon flickering into view, a digital echo from a world of circuits and code not yet dreamed. The people of early Sinjoh learned fear anew, not of monsters among them, but of the gods' lingering wrath encoded in every anomaly. Shrines rose hastily around the distortions, offerings piled high to appease Dialga and Palkia, whose distant silhouettes still haunted the northern skies during auroras. Artifacts like the Red Chain's remnants were buried deep, their power too volatile, whispered to be the key to reopening those wounds. Even today, in the games we play, echoes of this incident pulse through Platinum's story, where Cyrus seeks to recreate the binding at Spear Pillar, blind to the scars his predecessors left. Generations passed, and those rifts became part of the folklore, luring bold surveyors like the Galaxy team into their maw during their Pokédex quests. Encounters that blurred the line between study and survival. The distortions shaped Hisuian's identity, turning a frontier of discovery into a tapestry of temporal peril where every Pokémon caught might carry the echo of a god's fury. And as humans adapted, forging bonds amid the chaos, they began to channel that raw power into structured trials, setting the stage for something revolutionary. Next, in Chapter 20, The Origin of the Gym Challenge, you'll uncover how these ancient scars inspired the very battles that define our trainers today. Want to know the hidden Sinjoh roots of badges and arenas that spread across the world? You won't believe how it all connects. I hope you're as amazed by this as I am. If you want to stay updated on more content like this, make sure to subscribe and join our community of curious minds. Trust me, what's coming next will challenge everything you thought you knew. Amid the lingering rifts of those space-time distortions, where fragments of past and future bled into the Hisuian wilds, humanity took a pivotal step away from chains and conquests towards something far more enduring. You can almost feel the chill wind whipping across the scarred Spear Pillar, carrying whispers of a new order emerging from the ashes of divine fury. In the shadow of that catastrophe, the people of Hisui, those hardy settlers of Jubilife Village and the Galaxy team's descendants, began to forge bonds with Pokémon, not through iron restraints or fearful hunts, but through raw ceremonial clashes. Picture weathered warriors from the Diamond and Pearl clans, their faces painted with symbols of late guardians, facing off against noble alphas in moonlit clearings. These weren't mindless brawls, they were rituals steeped in respect. Tests of spirit where a trainer's will met a Pokémon's primal fury head-on. Victory meant harmony, a shared pulse of power echoing the gods themselves. Lose, and you'd learn humility under the stars, the ground trembling with the roar of unchained beasts. Those primal rights born from necessity in a land still raw from godly wrath, slowly sharpened into something structured. Clan leaders decreed formal trials. Conquer the Alpha of Obsidian Fieldlands, claim its plume as your badge of prowess. Traverse the fog-shrouded Crimson Mylands, best the Swamp Lords to earn a carved stone token. Each challenge tested not just strength, but strategy. Learning a Pokémon's cries, its flicker of intent before a strike, the subtle shift in terrain that turned tide to triumph. By the time Hisui's villages swelled into towns, these rituals had evolved into the structured gym system, 8 pillars of trial mirroring the region's fractured pillars, where challengers proved themselves worthy stewards of their partners. Word of this transformative path rippled outward from Sinjoh's reborn heartlands, carrying the seed of what we'd come to know as the League. As trade caravans crossed the seas from the rebranded ports of Canalave and Sunisho, tales of Hisuian victors spread like wildfire, trainers who tamed alphas without whips or god's wrath. Kanto's elders, still haunted by their own ancient ruins, adopted the model first, erecting dojos in misty pewter caves and electrified vermilion halls. Johto followed, weaving clan traditions into Akrutek's ghostly spires. Soon, Hoenn's volcanic peaks and Sinjoh's snowy summits hosted leagues of their own, each gym leader a living legend, badge in hand, guarding the elite path to champion's glory. The spread of the League concept from the Sinjoh region to the rest of the world wasn't conquest. It was revelation, a blueprint for unity in a world scarred by forgotten wars. And with that global embrace came the true standardization of Pokémon capture and training as a sport, no longer a fringe survival skill, but a celebrated pursuit. Pokéballs refined from Hisuian aprons into gleaming spheres of red and white, became tools of consent, empty promises of partnership, tossed in arenas under cheering crowds. Training regimens drew from ancient texts, the galaxy team's meticulous notes on type affinities, the clan shaman's chants for bond deepening. Leagues codified rules, 6-on-6 battles, no items in the fray, levels balanced for fair fury. What started as Hisuian desperation against distortions morphed into stadium spectacles, from Indigo Plateau's thunderous peaks to Wyndon's neon-lit coliseums, where millions watched humans and Pokémon dance in synchronized savagery, every capture a contract, every level up a symphony of growth. You sense it, don't you? These gym challenges weren't just games, they channeled the raw energies that once tore Sinjoh asunder, turning potential cataclysm into controlled sparks. Trainers roamed not as hunters, but athletes, their teams honed in gyms that echoed Hisui's wilds. Watery depths evoking the mire, fiery forges mimicking crimson bogs. This evolution quelled old fears, binding regions in a web of rivalry and respect, where even the mightiest legendaries watched from afar, their power mirrored in mortal hands. Yet, as these battles intensified across the world, challengers unearthed relics that pulsed with unstable might, stones that shattered limits in ways no gym badge ever could. That brings us straight into Chapter 21, the mystery of the Mega Stones, where we'll uncover how these glittering anomalies ignited a revolution in power, threatening to unravel the very sport they'd helped create. As the gym challenges radiated outward from Sinjoh, transforming raw Hisuian rituals into the structured leagues we know today, trainers everywhere began unearthing relics from eras long buried, strange, shimmering stones that pulsed with an otherworldly glow, hinting at evolutions beyond imagination. These weren't ordinary gems. Scattered across the continents like forgotten stars fallen to Earth, they held the power to temporarily elevate Pokémon to forms of divine might, where flames roared hotter on Charizard's back and Lucario's aura surged like a living storm. But their origins? Shrouded in catastrophe, born from humanity's darkest hour in the ancient kingdom of Kalos. Centuries before the modern world mapped its skies and seas, Kalos was a land of opulent spires and verdant fields, ruled by a king whose heart harbored unimaginable grief. His name was Az, a monarch who watched his beloved Floette perish in the flames of an endless war. Desperate, he tapped into the planet's boundless infinity energy, a raw, primordial force woven into every living thread of the world. He built a colossal machine, a weapon of resurrection and ruin, meant to bring his companion back from death. It worked at first. Floette returned, vibrant and whole, granted eternal life alongside its trainer. But grief twisted into vengeance. Az turned the machine on the battlefield, unleashing a beam of pure infinity energy that scorched the horizon in a blinding cascade of light. The air crackled with power, the ground trembled as if the earth itself screamed, and in that moment, the fallout of the ultimate weapon's beam collided violently with the planet's life force. Picture the devastation, not just the immediate blast that claimed countless lives, Pokémon and human alike, but the ripple that spread unseen. The infinity energy, that infinite wellspring sustaining all existence, clashed with the vital essence flowing through every creature, every blade of grass, every hidden spring beneath the soil. It was like fire meeting water in the planet's core, birthing chaos from harmony. Regions far beyond Kalos felt the tremor. Forests in Hoenn withered momentarily. Oceans in Sinjoh churned with unnatural tides, and the skies over Unova flickered with ethereal lights. From this cataclysmic fusion, something extraordinary emerged. The roiling energies cooled and condensed, solidifying into crystalline forms that rained down across the globe. This was the crystallization of infinity energy into megastones and keystones, those radiant orbs, each attuned to a specific Pokémon species, embedding themselves in mountains, riverbeds, and ancient ruins. A megastone for Venusaur might pulse with verdant life in the depths of a jungle, while one for Garchomp lay dormant in jagged desert crags, waiting for the day a worthy soul would awaken it. These stones weren't mere power sources. They were fragments of the world's wounded soul, carrying the echo of that fateful beam. In Kalos, they dotted the landscape where the war had raged fiercest, guarded by wild Pokémon who sense their volatile hum. Explorers in later ages would find them by chance, a Lucarionite clutched in the paw of a mountain hermit, or a Tyranitarite unearthed from volcanic ash, each one a testament to energy too vast for mortals to fully control. Yet the true wonder lay not in the stones themselves, but in what they revealed about the unbreakable ties between humans and Pokémon. Mega evolution, that fleeting transcendence where a Pokémon swells with newfound strength, its form twisting into something majestic and primal, demands more than a stone's spark. It requires a keystone, held by the trainer, resonating in perfect sync with its counterpart. This is the revelation that Mega Evolution is a manifestation of the bond between trainer and Pokémon, a profound connection forged through battles shared, trust earned, and journeys endured together. Without that heartfelt link, the stones remain inert, their power slumbering. It's why only certain trainers could ever harness it, those whose spirits intertwine so deeply with their partners that the infinity energy within recognized them as one. In the heat of competition, a flash of light erupts, the keystone shatters its limits, and the megastone responds, channeling the planet's life force through their union. Charizard Mega evolves with wings that blot the sun, its roar shaking the arena. Blaziken surges forward, flames trailing like comet tails, every move amplified by the trainer's unyielding will. This bond echoes the ancient companionships that birthed civilizations, the heroes of Hisui who tamed monsters into allies, the kings who fought alongside legendaries. But Azez's legacy twisted it into something bittersweet. Disgusted by the slaughter her trainer had wrought, even after resurrection, Floette abandoned him, vanishing into the wilds. Azez, now immortal and adrift, wandered the world for millennia, his machine dismantled, its secrets scattered with the stones. He became a ghost in history's margins, sighted by wanderers in Kalos, his eyes hollow with regret. Whispers persisted, though. In the shadows of Lumio's city, scholars pored over fragmented murals depicting the beam's glow, piecing together how infinity energy had forever altered evolution's path. Trainers who discovered megastones spoke of visions, fleeting glimpses of that ancient war, the life force crying out as it merged with the weapon's fury. And in Sinjoh, where Dialga and Palkia's clashes had long predated even AZ, some theorized the stones amplified older rifts, drawing on primordial energies from the spear pillar itself. Generations passed, and the stones faded into myth, rediscovered only when ambition reignited the flame. In the Kalos League, where AZ once watched from afar, Mega Evolutions lit up stadiums, a dazzling reminder of power's double edge, glorious, yet perilously unstable. Pokémon pushed to these heights risked losing themselves to the energy's pull, their forms straining against limits not meant to be breached for long. Today, as you train your teams under League banners born from Hisui's fires, those megastones still wait in hidden corners, pulsing faintly with the planet's heartbeat. They challenge us. What bonds are strong enough to wield such force without repeating history's tragedies? But deeper mysteries beckon, where the fabric of time frays and ancient crystals hide truths that defy reality itself in the paradox of Area Zero. Coming up next. Those shimmering megastones, born from the raw fury of infinity energy unleashed in Kalos, weren't the only remnants of cosmic forces twisting time and reality itself. Far across the sea in Paldea, a colossal crater scarred the Earth, its depths hiding anomalies that would challenge everything we know about the Pokémon world's timeline. 2 million years before the first recorded battles in Kanto, seismic upheavals ripped open the great crater of Paldea, forming Area Zero, a bottomless abyss where the planet's crust folded in on itself, trapping ancient secrets beneath layers of glittering crystal and forgotten stone. For eons it slumbered, a forbidden wound in the landscape, whispered about in Paldean folklore as the gateway to treasures beyond imagination. But it was the rise of the Paldean Empire, 2,000 years ago, that first stirred human curiosity toward its edges. Ambitious explorers from that golden age of discovery set out in fleets of sturdy ships, and caravans laden with provisions, driven by legends of boundless riches hidden in the crater's heart. They skirted the treacherous rims, mapping surface veins of rare minerals that fueled their empire's prosperity. Yet the true depths eluded them, repelled by howling winds and Pokémon guardians that seemed to emerge from thin air. Generation after generation, the expeditions grew bolder, their journals filled with sketches of bizarre lights flickering from below, sounds like echoes from another era rumbling through the rock. Then, precisely 200 years before the events of Generation 9, a daring team of scientists, adventurers, and Pokémon trainers finally pierced the veil. Led by the era's brightest minds, they descended in reinforced lifts and scaled sheer walls slick with bioluminescent moss, their lanterns casting long shadows on walls etched with primordial runes. This was the expedition that first mapped the depths of Paldea, charting twisting caverns that defied geometry, passages that looped impossibly, and chambers where gravity bent like a dream. What they uncovered rewrote history in the shadows, creatures that prowled these depths, defying the fossil record and every known evolutionary line. These were the Paradox Pokémon, ancient behemoths from a savage past and sleek machines from a distant future, beings that shouldn't exist in the current timeline. Roaring through the underbelly came the likes of Great Tusk and Screamtail, hulking relics with tusks like battering rams and fur matted from prehistoric hunts, their roars echoing like thunder from an ice age long buried. From crystalline spires gleamed future shades, sandy shocks with electromagnetic coils humming like engines yet to be invented, or Iron Valiant, a blade-wielding fusion of humanoid grace and cold alloy, gliding silently as if plucked from a world of hovering cities and endless tech. How could these anomalies thrive here, untouched by time's arrow? The expedition's logs, preserved in sealed vaults, spoke of a central crystal pulsing with Terrapagos energy, a legendary entity that warped reality itself, folding epochs into the crater's core and birthing these temporal exiles. Word of the find spread cautiously among Paldea's elite, sparking a frenzy of covert research. But the depths proved too perilous. Trainers vanished, equipment malfunctioned in temporal storms, and Paradox encounters left scars that no potion could heal. To bridge this chasm without risking lives, visionary professors in Paldea's modern academia turned to forbidden science, artificial intelligence. They crafted AI recreations of themselves. Professor Sada, obsessed with the wild antiquity of the past, her digital form clad in rugged hides, summoning ancient Paradox kin with a fervor that blurred machine and myth. Opposite her stood Professor Turo, eyes fixed on tomorrow's horizons, his avatar sleek and holographic, commanding future Paradox with calculations precise as clockwork. Together, these AI professors became the eternal wardens of Area Zero, their labs hidden in the crater's lip, servers humming with data streams that wove past conquests, present puzzles and future visions into a single thread. Sada's domain teemed with roaring titans that shook the earth, evoking the raw dawn of Pokémon kind, while Turo's halls echoed with whirring servos and plasma bursts, hinting at evolutions beyond flesh and bone. Through them, humanity peered into the Paradox without unraveling, yet their creations hungered for more, drawing bold students into the abyss to confront what time forgot. As these temporal rifts widened, whispers emerged of broader consequences rippling across Paldea and beyond. Ecosystems buckling under unseen pressures, species fading into obscurity. That story unfolds next in Chapter 23, The Decline of Species and Human Impact, where you'll uncover how our relentless pursuit carved wounds far deeper than any crater. As the echoes of those impossible Paradox Pokémon faded into Paldea's shadowed depths, humanity's gaze turned outward, reshaping the world in ways far more insidious than any time rift. Species that once thrived across the lands began to dwindle, not from cosmic battles or divine whims, but from the relentless press of human ambition. One such tragedy unfolded 1,500 years before the first Pokémon League stirred in Kanto, when hunters scoured the wilds with a singular, insatiable hunger, Far-fetched, those humble duck-like Pokémon forever clutching a fresh leak like a badge of survival, became the unwitting stars of this downfall. Picture vast flocks waddling through misty wetlands, their green stalks swaying like banners in the breeze, a delicacy prized for their tender meat and that ever-present vegetable garnish. But as villages swelled and appetites grew, what started as opportunistic snares turned into wholesale slaughter. Spears pierced their ranks, nets hauled them skyward by the hundreds, and soon the skies emptied of their quacks. Markets overflowed with plucked feathers and bundled leeks, sold as symbols of prosperity, while the wetlands fell eerily silent. The ripple effects cascaded through the ecosystem like stones skipped across a still pond. Predators that once feasted on far-fetched eggs turned desperate, raiding nests of rarer birds like Doduo and Pidgey, driving those populations to the brink. Leek fields, nurtured by the Pokemon's foraging, withered untended, choking waterways with unchecked weeds and starving herbivorous herds downstream. Insects that hitched rides on those migrating ducks found their pollinating routes severed, leaving berry groves barren and forcing Pokémon like Combi into famine-driven swarms. This wasn't mere extinction, it was a domino fall, where one species' greed unbalanced the web of life, leaving scars that lingered for centuries. Hunters boasted of bountiful hauls, blind to the hollow winds that followed. In the heart of Kalos, amid this shadow of loss, a quiet miracle took root. 1,500 years before the streets of Laver City buzzed with fairy tale charm, a colossal tree erupted from the earth, its trunk twisting skyward like a guardian spine. Seeds carried on forgotten winds, perhaps from the same disrupted wetlands, found fertile soil in a sun-dappled glade. Year by year, it swelled, branches weaving a canopy thick enough to whisper secrets to the stars, roots delving deep to drink from hidden springs. Villagers, drawn by its shade and the sweet sap that oozed like nectar, began to cluster at its base. Huts sprouted like mushrooms after rain, paths etched into the bark-wrapped soil, and soon a city bloomed around this ancient sentinel. Laver grew not in spite of the tree, but because of it, its massive limbs forming natural archways for markets, hollows sheltering the first fairy-type trainers who sensed its ethereal pulse. Festivals honored its growth rings, each one a chronicle of seasons past, while children carved swings from fallen boughs. Yet, as the city expanded, walls creeping outward like ivy, the tree stood as both heart and witness. Its presence stabilized the soil against floods from those same scarred wetlands, drawing Pokémon seeking refuge, Spritzy drifting on perfumed breezes, Sylveon curling in its shade. Laver became a haven, a fairy-lit jewel where human expansion harmonized with nature's quiet defiance, its streets curving organically around the trunk that had stood since the overhunting's wake. But harmony proved fragile as urban sprawl marched on. In distant Alola, where volcanic shores met endless seas, encroaching settlements squeezed far-fetched into crags and cliffs. Cut off from leaks, these survivors scavenged what they could, turnips plucked from terraced farms on the volcanic slopes. Over generations, their feathers toughened to a dusty brown, bodies compact for dodging human paths, evolving into a regional form uniquely adapted to the island's rugged isolation. No longer wetland wanderers, Alolan far-fetched wielded their root vegetables like clubs, a fiercer stance born of necessity, their cries sharper against the roar of encroaching crowds. Galar told an even grittier tale. As factories belched smoke over once green vales and cobblestones sprawled across moors, far-fetched faced not just hunters, but the grind of industry. Pushed to the fringes, they armored up, leeks hardening into shield-like spears through relentless trial. Only the mightiest endured, battling rivals in brutal displays to claim territory amid the urban tide. This forged the Galarian variant, stockier, battle-scarred, with a leek that doubled as a lance. And for those who triumphed through 1,000 clashes, evolution beckoned, surfetched, a knightly evolution standing tall against the concrete jungle, its stalk a trophy of survival. Urban expansion didn't just displace them, it sculpted new forms, Pokémon remade in the image of human encroachment. These regional shifts whisper a deeper truth about our world, how pressure forges resilience, turning victims into victors. Yet the cost lingers in every empty nest and withered field, a reminder that humanity's footprint reshapes not just landscapes but the very essence of life itself. As we edge closer to the shadowed relics that embody this ruin, Chapter 24 unveils the treasures of ruin, those ancient titans whose awakening could unravel everything we've rebuilt. As human hands reshape landscapes like the one around Lavera City, carving out homes from ancient trees and driving species like Farfetch to the brink, another shadow of ambition loomed far to the south in Paldea. There, 2,000 years ago, an ancient king arrived on these sun-baked shores, his ships heavy with forbidden relics plundered from a distant land across the sea. He called them treasures, these 4 artifacts, gleaming promises of unmatched power that he believed would secure his dynasty forever. A rugged stone tablet etched with forgotten runes, said to command the waters of the earth. A jagged sword, its blade whispering of conquest and unyielding might. A colossal earthen vessel, vast as a mountain's heart, pulsing with the raw force of the land itself, and a string of crimson beads, alive with a furious, devouring fire. The king paraded them through his new capital, vowing they would tame Paldea's wild frontiers, bend its Pokémon to his will, and elevate his rule above the gods. But greed has a way of twisting what it touches, doesn't it? As the artifacts were enshrined in grand temples across the region, the people's hearts darkened. Whispers spread of visions, endless droughts choking the rivers, blizzards burying villages in eternal ice, earthquakes splitting the earth like fragile clay, and flames that consumed forests without mercy. The king's own courtiers, once loyal, turned on each other in fits of paranoia, hoarding grain and weapons as if the world itself conspired against them. Fear festered in the shadows of those temples, feeding on the artifact's latent curse, until one fateful night, the air itself screamed with rage. From the stone tablet burst Wo Chien, a serpentine beast of damp moss and splintered wood. Its shell cracked like a desecrated well, coiling through the lowlands and unleashing floods that drowned fields and herds alike. The sword shattered its scabbard to reveal Chien Pao, a spectral leopard forged from ice and malice, its fangs dripping frost as it prowled the peaks, freezing warriors mid-charge and shattering armies with a single vengeful pounce. The vessel crumbled, birthing Tinglu, a moose-like titan of crumbling earth and spectral antlers, thundering across the plains and summoning quakes that toppled the king's own palace into rubble. And from the beads erupted Chi Yu, a swarm of blazing fish eyes orbiting a core of infernal fury, scorching the skies and igniting wildfires that turned verdant valleys to ash. These were no mere Pokémon. They embodied the ruinous transformation of greed and fear into living cataclysms, the treasures of ruin made flesh, hell-bent on unraveling the fragile balance Paldea had known. Villages vanished overnight, rivers ran backward, and the very soil wept blood-red sap. The king's dream empire fractured as survivors fled to the hills, their tales etched into cave walls still visible today. Desperation birthed unlikely heroes, humble shrine keepers and wandering monks who remembered older ways, attuned to the land's whispers. They ventured into the storm-ravaged wilds, not with armies, but with rituals born of Paldea's primal spirits. At each temple, they channeled the earth's forgiving pulse, weaving barriers of ancient script and living vines to bind the beasts once more. Wo Chien was lured to its flooded shrine in the east, sealed beneath stagnant waters that mirrored its own sorrow. Chien Pao vanished into glacial caverns high in the mountains, its roars muffled by eternal snows. Tinglu slumbered in the shadowed west, entombed in a cavern where the ground itself held it fast, and Chi Yu dimmed within fiery pools to the south, its blaze contained by rings of unburnt stone. These ceilings weren't mere imprisonments, they were acts of profound mercy, preserving the Paldean ecosystem from total annihilation. The floods receded, revealing richer soils, The blizzards yielded to blooming meadows, quakes stabilized into fertile tremors, and the fires cleared paths for new growth. The shrines stand to this day, their doors etched with warnings, humming with barely contained power that trainers still feel in their bones when they draw near. Yet echoes of that ancient calamity linger in Paldea's winds, a reminder that power unchecked devours its wielders. The king's line faded into legend, his treasures forever synonymous with downfall. And as the Paldean Empire rose from those ashes 2,000 years ago, embarking on their great explorations into craters and unknowns, they built their cities wide and watchful, ever mindful of what slumbers beneath. But what happens when breaches tear open, not from within the earth, but from rifts in reality itself? Coming up in Chapter 25, the Ultra Beast incursions will uncover invasions that threaten to shatter worlds entirely. Creatures from beyond our stars, hungry for chaos you won't believe survived the history books. Those ruinous Pokémon, born from the twisted emotions sealed within ancient tablets hauled across oceans by Paldea's long-forgotten king, remind us how fragile the veil between worlds can be. What if I told you that greed and fear were just the beginning? Mere echoes of a far vaster invasion that once plunged an entire region into eternal twilight. Long before the first ultra wormholes tore open in Alola's skies, a primal hunger from beyond our reality reshaped the island's very soul. Necrozma, the devourer of light itself, arrived eons ago, its crystalline form a blinding prism that pierced the fabric of dimensions. Drawn by Alola's radiant life force, it descended like a black hole cloaked in starfire, siphoning the sun's glow and the moon's silver sheen until the archipelago drowned in shadow. Rivers froze mid-flow, leaves withered to ash on the vine, and the air grew thick with a chill that seeped into bones. The people, those early islanders who danced under perpetual dawn, watched their world unravel as Necrozma gorged, its body swelling with stolen luminescence until it shattered under the weight, splintering into ferocious fragments. In desperation, the ancient kings of Alola forged pacts with the land's guardians. Tapu Koko, with thunder crackling from its shell, led the charge, channeling the island's primal energy to forge ethereal shields. Tapu Lele scattered healing mists to stave off the encroaching dark, while Tapu Bulu uprooted forests to barricade the beast's rampage, and Tapu Fini wove barriers of mist and tide to contain the fallout. Together, they drove Necrozma back through a rift it had clawed open, but not before it had forever scarred the region. The kings erected the altar of the Sunne and altar of the moon, colossal ziggurats aligned with celestial paths in a ritual bid to lure the Light Eater back and restore balance. Legends whispered of a prophecy. A chosen one wielding both sun and moon would merge the fragments, unleashing Necrozma's true stellar form. Yet the hunger lingered, a cosmic void echoing through Alola's myths, warning that light from other worlds could eclipse their own. Millennia passed, those altars crumbling into vine-choked ruins until the fragile peace fractured anew. In the shadow of Mount Lanakila, where perpetual storms brew, the first modern ultra wormholes flickered into existence, jagged tears in the sky vomiting forth otherworldly horrors known as ultra beasts. These weren't mere Pokémon, they were refugees and predators from the ultra multiverse, a labyrinth of parallel realities where space twisted like living fractals, unbound by our laws of physics. Nihilego drifted through first, its jellyfish tendrils pulsing with neurotoxins that puppeted human minds, turning trainers into unwitting puppets in an invasion no one saw coming. Buzzwole flexed bulging arms through emerald rifts, shattering boulders with raw alien might, while Pheromosa glided like a blade of ice, outpacing the swiftest Salazzle. The breaches multiplied, wormholes blooming like wounds across Alola's horizon. Over Melamale Beach, where Kartana sliced palm fronds into confetti. Above Ulaula's haunted shores, where Xurkitree snaked its electrified vines into power grids, sparking wildfires that lit the night. Stakataka lumbered from crimson voids, a fortress of living stone that toppled radio towers, and Guzzlord erupted from the deepest rifts, a gluttonous maw devouring cars and cliffs alike. Celesteela rocketed skyward from Akala's volcanoes, trailing plasma exhaust that scorched the earth. These ultra beasts didn't conquer. They infested warping ecosystems as they hunted for sustenance in a world not their own. Pokémon fled in panic, herds of Tauros stampeding through villages, while bewildered trainers found their teams overwhelmed by foes that phased through attacks like ghosts in a mirror. Panic gripped the islands as reports flooded in. Aether Paradise, that gleaming fortress masquerading as sanctuary, became ground zero under Luzamine's obsessive gaze. She saw not threats, but beauties to collect, ripping open more gates with forbidden tech stolen from ultra-space wreckage. But the world beyond Alola stirred. From the shadows of international shadows emerged the International Police's UB Task Force, an elite squad forged in secrecy to combat these interdimensional threats. Looker, the grizzled agent with a trench coat scarred by otherworldly claws, spearheaded the unit alongside Annabelle, a former Elite Four haunted by her own rift-crossed past. Armed with ultra wormhole trackers, containment nets woven from Tapu-granted fibers, and Pokeballs reinforced against extra-dimensional energies, they sealed breaches from Pony's Wilds to Executor Island's groves. No longer could the multiverse bleed unchecked. The task force mapped the rift's patterns, predicting outbreaks tied to lunar phases and geomagnetic storms, turning chaos into calculated hunts. Yet for every beast captured, whispers grew of greater forces stirring. Necrozma's ancient rampage wasn't isolated. Its hunger had punched the first permanent holes between worlds, priming Alola as a nexus for incursions. The ultra-multiverse pulsed with countless realms, some barren voids of endless hunger, others teeming with crystalline megastructures where beasts like Poipole swarmed in iridescent hives. Our reality, fragile and light-rich, became a beacon, drawing predators across the veil. As the task force's victories mounted, sealing wormholes with precision strikes and returning beasts to their fractured homes, a deeper synthesis began to emerge, weaving these cosmic ruptures into the Pokémon world's grand tapestry. That story unfolds in Chapter 26, the modern synthesis of myth, where ancient myths collide with today's cutting-edge discoveries in ways that will redefine everything you thought you knew about creation itself. As the echoes of Necrozma's light-devouring rampage faded from Alola's ancient skies, humanity didn't cower in awe of such otherworldly forces. No, they reached out with scalpels and gene sequencers, determined to bottle that same cosmic fury in a lab coat. In the sun-drenched paradise of Alola, the Aether Foundation emerged as the gleaming pinnacle of this ambition, a pristine white fortress floating amid the waves, where scientists cloaked their god playing in the noble guise of conservation. Luzamine, the Foundation's enigmatic president, poured billions into unraveling the Ultra Beast's invasion, those interdimensional horrors that tore through reality like jagged wounds. But beneath the rhetoric of protection, her labs pulsed with a darker drive, to seize the reins of creation itself. Picture vast sterile chambers humming with cryogenic hums, vials of shimmering ectoplasm harvested from wormhole rifts, and holographic displays mapping the DNA of beasts that defied time and space. The Aether Foundation wasn't just studying these invaders, they were reverse engineering divinity, splicing legendary essences into something controllable, something theirs. Across the ocean in Kanto's volcanic haze, the Cinnabar lab burned with a similar fever. Buried in the ruins of the old Cinnabar mansion, where flames had long ago licked at forbidden research notes, scientists like the reclusive Dr. Fuji pushed the boundaries further. They unearthed a single eyelash from the elusive Mew, that pink phantom embodying all Pokémon potential, and from it birthed Mewtwo. Not a clone, but an amplification. A psychic colossus engineered in bubbling vats, its mind forged in isolation tanks where it raged against its cage of glass and steel. These weren't mere experiments. They were humanity's gauntlet thrown at the feet of Arceus, the alpha Pokémon whispered to have shaped the world from nothingness. And nowhere did this hubris crystallize more sharply than in the Aether Foundation's crowning abomination, type Null. Conceived in the shadow of Ultra Beast outbreaks, this synthetic warrior was no ordinary Pokémon. Its creators, led by the brilliant yet tormented Faber, drew from the marrow of mythology itself. They wove in traits from every known type, mimicking the primal plates that Arceus uses to command reality's elements. A helmet of reinforced alloy clamped over its skull, suppressing a power so volatile it could unravel ecosystems in seconds. This wasn't a guardian against beasts from beyond, it was an Arceus killer, designed with RKS cells, a recursive genetic system that let it adapt, evolve, and strike at the heart of any godlike entity. When the helmet shattered, Null transformed into Silverly, a sleek silver predator with a memory drive slot for type-shifting discs, prowling the labs like a judgment from the void. You can almost hear the whir of centrifuges spinning legendary fragments into obedience. Smell the ozone tang of energy fields stabilizing unstable genomes. Cinnabar's furnaces glowed red-hot as Mewtwo's gestation pod cracked open, unleashing a roar that shattered windows miles away. Aether's corridors echoed with the clank of Null's armored footsteps, its multi-typed fury tested in simulated battles against digital phantoms of Dialga and Palkia. These labs became modern forges where humanity alchemized myth into weaponry, chasing the thrill of playing creator without the burden of reverence. Yet, as these synthetic deities stirred in their cradles, a shadow crept in, the ethical boundary between respecting mythology and engineering gods. Was Mewtwo's birth a triumph of science, or a violation of Mew's wild, untamed essence? Fuji poured his grief for a lost daughter into that purple behemoth, blurring the line between fatherly love and Frankenstein folly. Luzamine herself descended into madness, her obsession with perfect, eternal beauty driving her to fuse with Nihilego, an ultra beast whose neurotoxins warped her into a queen of the void. Type, Null, meant to save Alola, was abandoned like a failed prototype, wandering feral until Gladion, her own son, claimed it as a symbol of rebellion. Think of the technicians who whispered prayers before activating these creations, their hands trembling on consoles etched with ancient runes borrowed from Sinnoh tablets. They knew the law. Arceus birthed the Lake Guardians to temper Dialga and Palkia's chaos. Kyogre and Groudon clashed in primal fury before Rayquaza intervened. Humans with their microscopes and moral blinders dared to replicate that without the wisdom of eons. Silverly's drive, loaded with a fire memory, could mimic Arceus's judgment, but at what cost? The Pokémon world trembled not from divine wrath, but from the hubris of mortals who forgot that gods don't appreciate rivals born in a petri dish. These lab-born legends didn't stay contained. Mewtwo fled into the night, carving its legend across Kanto's stormy peaks, a ghost in the machine haunting the Pokémon League itself. Silverly prowled Alola's wilds, a reminder that even engineered perfection craves freedom. The Aether Foundation crumbled under scandal, its paradise lost, while Cinnabar's ashes fertilized a new era of bioethics debates in every Pokéball factory. Science had touched the divine, tasted its fire, and recoiled with singed fingers. But this modern synthesis of myth is just the latest twist in a pattern as old as the stars themselves. In our next chapter, the cyclical nature of legend will uncover how these human-god experiments echo ancient cataclysms, repeating in endless loops that bind heroes, legends, and disasters together forever. What hidden force pulls these cycles back to the brink, night after night? While humanity's labs chase shadows of godhood with creations like Silverly, the Pokémon world's true history whispers of a far older rhythm, one where mortals don't just mimic the divine, they summon it from slumber. Across millennia, cataclysms have clawed at the edges of regions, only for unlikely heroes to rise and pull the world back from the brink. Take Galar, 3,000 years before the games we know. A meteor crashed, birthing Eternatus in its Eternamax form, unleashing the darkest day, a perpetual black storm that twisted Pokémon into towering Dynamax giants, rampaging across the land in endless fury. Skies choked with crimson clouds, rivers boiled under colossal feet, and the earth itself groaned as Gigantamax forms reshaped mountains into craters. Yet two wild wolves, Zacian and Zamazenta, bound themselves to a pair of human youths, forging blades and shields of legend. Together, they cleaved through the storm's heart, sealing Eternatus away. The heroes faded into myth, their Pokémon partners forgotten, while the youths ascended as kings, but the cycle held, collapse averted. This wasn't a singular storm. In Kalos, centuries before Paldea's empires stirred, warlords waged slaughter across the continent, Pokémon and people alike ground into dust. King AZ, mad with grief over his fallen Floette, tapped infinity energy from the world's core, a radiant force pulsing like a second heartbeat beneath the soil. He forged a machine of resurrection and ruin, granting himself eternal life but unleashing devastation that scorched armies to ash in blinding flares. Floette fled in horror, but the war ended, the land scarred yet enduring. Aziz wandered forever after, a ghost in his own immortality, as the cycle turned once more. Sinjoh's blackened plateau tells a similar tale, eons before Unova's castles crumbled. Dialga, Lord of Time, and Palkia, Shaper of Space, clashed in a cataclysm born of clashing truths and ideals. Their battle rent reality, fire vortexes spiraled into lightning maelstroms, the plateau cracking like eggshell under cosmic fury. Shards of their unleashed energy hurtled worldwide, crystallizing into megastones, hidden veins of power that would one day grant Pokémon forms of fleeting godhood. Amid the chaos, human hands inscribed the tales, and the region stabilized, heroes lost to the windswept myths. Unova buried its own collapse under modern soil. Ancient rulers built grand castles in harmony with Pokémon, only for truth and ideals to fracture into war, toppling spires into dust. Those ruins slumbered beneath new cities, a reminder that companionship sours into conflict, demanding resolution. Even Hisui birthed the first gym challenges. Trials forged in primal strife, spreading as a ritual to channel human Pokémon bonds against recurring darkness. You see the pattern etched across the ages, the recurring pattern of chosen ones rising to stop regional collapses. Not always kings or warriors, but ordinary souls touched by destiny. Youths with sword wolves, grieving fathers wielding forbidden energy, chroniclers amid godly duels. They bridge the mortal and mythical, their courage the spark that reignites the legends. And why do these legendary Pokémon choose to slumber until human intervention awakens them? Legends like Regigigas, crafting golems 10,000 years past in imitation of its colossal form,